We're going to call the meeting back to order. And at this point, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Regent Robinson, who will be chairing the Academic Research and Student Affairs Committee. Regent Robinson.
Thank you, Chairman Tuss. We'll go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to thank the student Senate members that we had lunch with, and for your recommendations, your thoughts, your all of the work that you're doing right now. We really appreciate that, and it was good to spend some time with you today. We're going to go ahead and get started right away here. What I'd like to do is we've got short consent agenda, quite a few action items that we're going to have to get through here. And a few information items. So let's go ahead and get started with the first item, which is the Education Mission Review. And we have a speaker here to share some thoughts with us. And I'd like to turn this over to Deputy Commissioner Moisey right now.
Thank you, Chair Robinson, members of the board. I'd like to ask Dr. Lee Thornton to come sit at the table, and as he's working his way up here, I want to give a little bit of background. Dr. Thornton is a representative of our accrediting agency, the Northwest Commission on Colleges and University. Dr. Thornton sat on the board, or the commission, for about 6 years. And has been, since that time, has been a consultant with NWCCU in terms of helping design the new 7-year accreditation process, and much more recently is working, I think, with representatives from this campus and others on the assessment of outcomes on the campus level. Prior to that, Dr. Thornton was a President Emeritus of Columbia Basin College, and I had asked, you'll remember in the May meeting, Dr. Thornton and Sandra Ellman, the president of NWCCU, attended the board meeting and talked a little bit about the role of the board in the accreditation process. And specifically, what I had asked Dr. Thornton to talk about today was the role of the board in terms of the review of campus missions, and you'll recall that the board approves changes in mission statements, and we have several of those items on the agenda today, and also approve the core themes of the campuses, and you'll see one of those items for Western. And if you'll indulge me for a second, as we look at going through the board approval or review of the missions, I'd like to have you think a little bit about how the accreditation process works. And it's a 7-year, and Lee, hopefully I'm not stealing what you're going to say here too much, but the first year report on that 7-year cycle is just what the campus mission and core themes are, and really what a lot of the inputs and resources are for the campus to be able to fulfill that mission. The last year, the 7-year report, really then is how has the campus fulfilled that mission. And so that's why, from an accreditation perspective, I think it's critical, and the new process really lays that out, that campuses can demonstrate that they have fulfilled what they said they would do. And the board's review of campus missions, I think, is an integral and an important piece of that. So, Dr. Thornton.
Thank you. And Dr. Ellman sends her greetings to all of you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about mission and mission fulfillment because it really is at the heart of the accreditation process. As Dr. Ellman talked the last time she met with you, she explained that the role of accreditation is to assure quality, to ensure institutional effectiveness, and continuous improvement. The board is the primary source and responsibility for quality within the institution. The board is the guardian of the mission, I think is the way that I like to look at it. If you were the board of a brand new institution, you would be put in place to be stewards of that mission. The mission would be an organic product coming from the owners of the institution. And in the same way, although you came into this situation with an existing mission, your role is to guard that mission and to ensure that the mission is meeting the goals of the communities that you serve, and to make any adjustments or to make any changes that are necessary. There are two important pieces to this in terms of the role of the board, and I think you recall that last time we showed this particular graphic, and as Dr. Ellman likes to talk about the board's role as being the bookends to the accreditation process. In Standard 1, the institution is required to state its intended purpose. We know there are many outcomes that an institution is able to partake to its students, but the issue for accreditation is for the institution to declare what is its intended purpose. And this is, I think, a very important role for the board to be able to articulate in terms that are measurable and in terms that can be represented in terms of outcomes, what is the intended purpose of the board, and that is Standard 1. Standards 2, 3, and 4 are largely what we called input-output standards. They deal with what goes on within the institution. They deal with the means by which to achieve those ends. And then we get to Standard 5, which is mission fulfillment. And this, again, is a very important role for the board to be able to review and monitor performance of the institution in order to be able to say something about what has gone on. What kind of experience did a student have when they attended the institution? What kind of research is contributing to a body of knowledge? Or what kind of service is the institution rendering its ownership? Mission fulfillment is a rather new standard. It is part of the revision that occurred and was put into place in 2011. And so far, I can tell you as a person who has read quite a few accreditation reports that we're still looking for the, not the ideal Standard 5 statement, but we're looking for statements that best represent the outcomes of the institution. We don't have any procedures for that process. We have procedures for measuring inputs and for measuring outputs, but we don't have procedures for measuring outcomes. That's because we have 165 institutions, and each of those institutions have important missions that they are attempting to fulfill. And they all go about that process in different ways. We don't have standard methodology for assessing those outcomes. And as Neil mentioned, we are in the process of putting together a demonstration project of which the University of Montana will be participating, where we might develop some best practices on what in fact constitutes an effective and a satisfactory mission statement. However, the question, and I think one that the board needs to contemplate, is what are the most effective ways for you to monitor mission performance? So on one end, you are involved in articulating the purpose, the intended purpose of the institution. And then on the other end, you are responsible for monitoring how well those outcomes are being accomplished. This shift from inputs to outputs to outcomes is causing a lot of interesting discussion, not only regionally, but nationally. And I think it is the perfect time for all of our Northwest institutions to take a hard look at that process. And the board is at the heart of it. The board is at the heart of it. Neil wanted me to mention or talk a little bit about mission review, because you're dealing with missions that already exist. And so what is the process by which, and what is the role of the board in mission review? And I think they have a very important role. They don't necessarily are not the instigators of mission change or mission reform unless that change, again, organically evolves from the constituents that you're serving. But in practical terms, I think it really becomes a cooperative process. You have institutions that are closely in touch with their communities, with their professions, and certainly things change, and they have then the desire to bring those changes in terms of how they might affect the mission. And so you have that particular source. You have students, you have community, you really have a number of stakeholders and shareholders who come together in order to ensure that the board, in fact, is helping and ensuring that the institution does meet its mission. So in terms of a mission review, it is largely a function of policy that you develop in order to achieve the proper end. Now, there may be some interesting reasons for mission adjustments that have to do with non-duplication or geographical issues, those kinds of things. But the changes in mission itself should be, I think, a collaborative process by which all of the stakeholders contribute. But fundamentally, it is up to the board to approve the mission. And in the other documents, I provided you a couple of other documents, basically a portion of Standard 2 and also the Standard 1 on mission. And the Mission 1A1 that states that the institution has a widely published mission statement that is approved by the governing board. So you certainly have a role in terms of the accreditation standards in approving the mission. From the governance point of view, Standard 2A3 states the institution monitors its compliance with commission standards for accreditation, which I think provides a basis from which and legitimizes your role in monitoring outcomes. And 2A6, the board establishes reviews, regularly revises as necessary, and exercises broad oversight of institutional policies, including those regarding its own organization and operation. Candidly, between you and me, I think the standards could be a little bit more articulate around the exact role of the mission, but I think of the board. But I think the reason for this is because for most of our accreditation life, we've been involved with inputs and outputs. We really haven't focused on outcomes to the extent that the commission is headed right now. And I think the outcomes pursuit really, again, re-involves the board in monitoring institutional performance. Could I answer any questions?
Do any of the committee members, first of all, have any questions regarding Dr. Thornton's opening statements, explanation of what our role is in reviewing the mission statements? We have a number of them that we'll be looking at here this afternoon. Commissioner Christian?
Chairman Robinson, members of the board, just appreciate your indulgence. Probably the question, why are we doing this again or yet another round? And I think Regent Sheehy, to some of your earlier questions to me, this is square and center where a board should fit in. And I do want to preface this my comments and this presentation isn't to suggest that we're not completely supportive of the mission reviews that are coming forward today. I'm not trying to shed a spotlight or a microscope on those. I certainly am not. I do support what is being brought forward. I think there's been a lot of effort go into those, but I really think this is sort of the heart and soul of what a board should be looking at. I think what those institutions are going to be is kind of at the root of a lot of the conversations we've had in terms of resources, in terms of scope, size. We have a lot of institutions in Montana when you look at us compared to other states. And I think that's a good thing. We have a large geographical area, but it also spreads our resources pretty thin. And so I think we have to really decide what each of our institutions are going to be and what role they play in the overall system, where they fit in, and how we'll allocate resources to those. So I really do think this is important work. This is board level work. This is where we need guidance. And so we want to get you very familiar with the process and what the expectations are and ultimately where we go. I said at the last meeting, but as we look at mission statements and ultimately look at the mission of the institutions, maybe more than the statements, there's reasons that they need changed. One is either sort of board sanctioned, board guided change of the mission, which happens and is part of it, or we've got kind of this a situation of drift. And I think that's really where the board needs to try to drill down and see where these fall as they come before you, and we'll continue to bring them before you. We're on a board policy that suggests you should look at the mission of each institution on 3-year cycles. We haven't done a very good job of that in the past, but we will see that happens. And so I think that's sort of the mindset. You know, I mentioned earlier at WICHE, we talked a lot about the Higher Education Act, and there was a gentleman from DC that was part of 2 previous administrations and talked about Pell in terms of 50 years of incremental creep. And I don't want to see that be sort of the model that drives the Montana University system. I think we should have defined plans of action, and we should stay on those and make sure that our institutions are staying on those. And to me, that's sort of the only way that ultimately we will balance what the needs are of the students in the state with the resources that we have to operate those. And so anyway, I just wanted to say, I think this is very important work. I think it is purely policy level, board level decision. So we're trying to give you as much background and bring as much expertise to the conversation as we can. So as you look at these over the next 3 years, you'll have a good backdrop and a good basis for making the decisions.
Could I just add to that, though, that I think the mission fulfillment piece is really the ultimate measure of whether or not that mission is being effective. So you can have, a articulate mission with well-intended purpose, but if you don't monitor that mission and find ways in which to articulate how well or how much progress, I mean, it is all process. We never reach an end, per se. So we take a snapshot in time and we say, at this snapshot in time, we are making this progress, and therefore, I think that you go back then through the analysis process, and that's the continuous improvement part of this, and you go back and you review whether or not that mission is still relevant. Are those intended purposes still relevant? So I want to, emphasize the mission fulfillment piece, the standard 5 piece, because I think that really does bring to light whether or not that mission is important and is relevant.
Are there any other comments from the committee members at all, or any questions at all? Yes, Neil?
Chair Robinson, and I just wanted to follow up a little bit on the point that Dr. Thornton made is having the board periodically mid-cycle even. And so the current board policy says that every campus will present a mission review every 3 years. And so that fits nicely within the current 7-year cycle. We might have to adjust that date a little bit now, that 3-year piece, to make it fit better in there. So the intention is early on in the process, mid-process, to see staying on course, and then at the end in terms of the fulfillment piece.
Yes, Regent Johnstone.
Thank you. I'm struggling to understand what we're supposed to be doing. There's 125 or 50 pages of material here. Has the committee reviewed this, and does it have a recommendation about any changes in mission? Does the commissioner have any? I'm struggling with what my role is here.
Mr. Chair, Regent Johnstone, when we get to those items, each campus will present their mission and the review and the materials that go with that as we get to the action items. Is that what you're asking me? Or?
And will there be, in the context of that, identifications of how this represents a change in the former mission, or will there be comment about from the commissioner's office or the committee with respect to whether the changes are appropriate?
Mr. Chairman, Regent Johnstone, there will be both.
Okay.
Last meeting, we had a couple mission reviews from MSU and U of M, and there wasn't necessarily proposed changes, and that's fine. I think both items, or at least a couple of the reviews that you will see in the action agenda, have some changes, and those have been well vetted and supported, and they will talk to those specific changes and why the changes are necessary and what has led up to those, and ultimately back to the fulfillment piece, whether they are truly in line with their mission and if they're fulfilling the mission as described. So yeah, I think this is background information, but as we move to the action items, hopefully those are well explained. And to be honest, I guess to my earlier comments, if they're not, we should see that is done. So the board is very comfortable with the direction that we're all moving as we move forward with the individual missions of these campuses.
Also, well, thank you, Commissioner Christian. Also, I wanted to respond to your question. And yes, the committee, the ARSA committee has met on these. We've discussed these. What we're going to be doing now as a committee is at least having an opportunity to hear some presentations on these as well. Have some discussions as a committee, but also have some open it to questions as well if other regents have questions. And I think from my experience over the past few years is that we haven't had too many of these before us. And so I'm thankful to see that this is happening more consistently so that we do have an opportunity to ask questions, to find out how the process was developed, to review each one of these missions and how they came to their conclusions. So I'm glad that we have this in front of us.
Can I ask a procedural question?
Yes.
If a school is interested in starting a program that's well outside their mission, let's say if Billings wanted to start a medical program, is duplication the major issue there, or does do they look at, the area they're serving and the needs and the relevancy? Or I just want to make sure that understand the boundaries of what allows an institution to go well outside of their mission.
Well, the answer to the question basically is that their mission should fit exactly what they're doing. So if somehow that's evolving, it's changing, because each institution they're in a process of review and refinement of the course offerings and what they're focused on, then that gives another reason to go back to that mission and review it and make sure that it's in line with that. If it isn't, then yeah, that's an issue that needs to be addressed.
Chairman Robinson, Regent Albrecht, I think that's right. And one of the examples today will be from Montana Tech, and I think it's a good example because it's not a product of drift. It's a product of, a multi-year process that has somewhat evolved some of what they're doing, and I think that was sanctioned by the board and ultimately approved by the board, and so we need to make sure that the statement is consistent with the practice. But on both of those, I don't want the cart ahead of the horse or vice versa, right? We got to make sure these things are sort of in sync and in step with each other, and that we, one, have the institutions behaving in a manner that has been approved and sanctioned by the board, and then two, behaving in a manner that is appropriate with the accrediting body. And getting that on the same page is sort of what this process is about.
We want to keep on moving, so I'll ask again if there's any other folks here, whether it be campus administrators or Board of Regents, that have any other questions for Dr. Thornton. Seeing none, we want to thank you for coming back in May and also now again to give us an overview of board responsibility regarding to mission review.
Well, I appreciate your considering this topic. I really think that mission, the contemplation of the mission and mission fulfillment are extremely important topics that have not been focused on substantially and for perhaps good reason. But it's also very hard work. It really takes a lot of hard work to analyze and figure out exactly what you want to be doing and then whether or not you're actually accomplishing it. So I commend you on your efforts to do so. And I think the state of Montana will benefit from it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to go into the next item for the committee, which is the consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda. And for any of the committee members, does anyone wish to remove either of those items for separate action? See none. Is it the will of the committee to move these forward to a vote tomorrow by the full board? All right, so moved. Neil, do you have anything to say regarding the consent agenda?
Other than the items, the level 2 has already been discussed in a previous meeting, and then the other item, I'm not quite sure of the contents.
All right, thank you very much. Now we're going to move into the action items, the first action item. What we'd like to do is, from time to time, we meet as a committee as a whole. So we'll join the rest of the Board of Regents, and I would like to turn over this particular action item and have Chair Tuss lead us in this particular item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Robinson. For action item A only, we will be acting as a committee of the whole, as a full board, to consider the Regents professor nomination from the University of Montana. So at this point, I'd like to turn the floor over to President Engstrom. President Engstrom.
Thank you, Chairman Tuss, members of the board. What a pleasure it is to have this agenda item before us. I'm going to invite Professor Ray Calloway to come forward, if he would, please, and Associate Dean Charlie Jansen. And while they're making their way here, I'll make some introductory comments. The Regents Professor designation is the highest honor the Regents can bestow upon a faculty member within the Montana University system. Only 18 people so far have received this honor. It's reserved for those who are exemplars in teaching, research, and service. Nominations come from the academic units, and on this campus, they're vetted first by a faculty committee consisting of current Regents professors and other faculty members. Then nominations go to the appropriate dean, the provost, the president, and of course, the Regents for the final decision. On our campus, our 9 Regents professors serve as a special advisory council to the provost as well as to me as president. We have several of our current Regents professors here with us today, and I would just like them to stand and let us recognize them for their accomplishments in the past. Today, I'm pleased to bring before you for your approval the nomination of Professor Ray Calloway as our next Regents professor. Dr. Calloway is a professor of biological sciences here at the University of Montana, and in that role, he has taught all levels of students, from freshmen to those in the doctoral program. He's conducted groundbreaking research in plant biology, and he has been an outstanding citizen to this university, to the state, and to his profession literally around the world. I'm going to ask Associate Dean Charlie Jansen to give a little bit more detailed introduction of Ray, but ask them both to come up here to the podium if they would at this time.
President Engstrom, thank you so much for the chance to introduce my colleague, Ray Calloway. I nominated Ray for the Regents professorship, fully believing that he meets every expectation for the outstanding recognition of this title. Ray is without question a phenomenally productive scientist of international stature and renown. His work is extremely highly cited, over 13,000 times. That's 13,000 publications that cite his work. And he is recognized for his original and distinctive contributions in plant community ecology, including several recent national distinctions, among them being cited by Thomson Reuters' list of highly cited scientists. His collaborations are truly global. Just in the last 5 years, he's had 28 visiting scientists from 18 foreign countries on 5 continents. So this is truly a phenomenal level of outreach. Several external letters were eloquent in describing the impact and high regard that Ray has had in his field. Of course, being a great scientist doesn't mean much of anything to the students here if he isn't accessible to the students. And Ray is far from that. He's been very accessible, having contributed to teaching from non-majors all the way up to graduate students, as President Engstrom pointed out. He's also a phenomenally outstanding popular teacher. His students often rate him as being the best or most appreciated teacher amongst all of his colleagues within the division in any given year. He has a phenomenal characteristic of being able to combine encouragement and rigor amongst amongst the students that he mentors, particularly his undergraduates, who often go on to publish scientific papers based on the research that they did with Ray. In addition to research and teaching, Ray contributes in many, many ways and generously to professional service at every level, including within the department, his graduate program, the university, and the entire Montana University system, where he currently serves as the director of the Montana statewide experimental program to stimulate competitive research, which is a national network funded by the National Science Foundation. Within his department, Ray is especially esteemed and appreciated as a leader and as a mentor to his junior colleagues. Ray is no stranger to talking to the public about science, from judging middle school science fairs to providing an extension course on range ecology for ranchers. In every interaction and position that Ray serves, he is honest and straightforward. His ability to tell it like it is one of the most refreshing and unique aspects of Ray and makes him invaluable as a colleague, mentor, administrator, and as a friend. Please join me in welcoming Professor Ray Calloway.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I would ask at this time if you would take formal action on Ray's nomination and then come up and be a part of the presentation.
What is the pleasure of the board on this item?
Chair Tess, I would like to make a motion to accept the nomination of Dr. Ray Calloway as Regents Professor.
You've all heard the motion of Regent Albrecht. Is there any further discussion by members of the board? Any further discussion by members of the board? Any further discussion by the campuses or the public? Seeing none, all in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Yeah.
So Ray, in addition to that certificate, I'd like to present you with the University of Montana Regents Professor Medallion and ask you to make a few comments, if you would. Congratulations.
Thank you, Rice. Well, I want to thank the Board of Regents, obviously, for taking the time and the effort to do this. This has been an amazing experience this week. Thank you, Royce. It's hard, and Charlie, it's hard to come up with words to actually thank you in a way that sounds sincere, but I'm very grateful. And I'm also very grateful and amazed by the reaction of my community here at the University of Montana. This week of emails and phone calls and handshakes in the gym have just been fantastic. I've been blown away by the whole thing. But Roy said that I had 3 minutes, so I'm going to take the last 2 minutes and 11 seconds to say something about plant ecology, or ecology in general, I'm sorry, at the University of Montana. And the point that I want to make is that if you calculate it sort of pound by pound, ecologists writ large at the University of Montana are more research productive and are more cited by other scientists than at any other institution in North America. So that means number one, numero uno for the University of Montana. And this comes from a study, this comes from a study by Megan Kelville in the College of Forestry and Conservation, who calculated the statistics and found, again, if you calibrate by the size of the faculty at the University of Montana, which is relatively small, we come out number one in 3 very important metrics: number of publications published in a given year, the citation of those publications, again, North America wide, and then the index derived from those publications, number one in all categories. And I just think it's very important for you all at the Board of Regents and the community writ large to know what a big deal that this is. And these are my colleagues. And the picture gets even more exciting, I think, as a lot of the board knows, at the state level, because ecologists and evolutionary biologists and wildlife biologists, conservation biologists at UM are now integrated statewide through the Institute on Ecosystems, which is approved by the Board of Regents. And this is connecting ecologists across the state in a way that is turning out to be pretty stunning. If I had 10 minutes, I'd talk more about that in terms of how this is being leveraged. But it integrates ecologists, again, that's a very wide group of scientists at UM, at MSU, at Montana Tech, and institutions across the state. No other state is doing anything like this, and it's all of a sudden starting to produce some pretty amazing benefits. So the bottom line is that I don't work in a vacuum. I work in a fantastic institutional setting, and I have a faculty of colleagues that are not surpassed anywhere, obviously now, in the nation. And I think I can say for most of my colleagues that I wouldn't trade this for anything. Again, thank you very, very much.
Dr. Calloway, thank you for your service to Montana, and once again, congratulations. Chair Robinson.
Thank you, Chairman Tuss. I also want to say that, you know, in reading through the information that we received regarding Dr. Calloway, that we were truly amazed at the impact that you had, not only the accomplishments, but the impact that you've had on the multitude of students that you've worked with. I think that's the greatest legacy right there, so thank you so much. We're gonna go ahead and continue on here. That was action item A, so let's move to action item B, which is the first mission review for Montana Tech of the University of Montana. And for that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Dr. Moisey.
Thank you, Chair Robinson, members of the board. I'd like to invite Chancellor Blackketter and Provost Abbott to present the mission review, and just as a little bit of background and perhaps to address Regent Albrecht and Johnstone's questions. You heard a lot this morning as we talked about faculty, as we talked about some of the other issues going on or initiatives in the system. And you know, the words, is this consistent with the mission of the campus? Were pretty key things. And so this is really the part where the board does to get to review what that mission is and if there's a change in that mission. And this is really then what drives what happens on a campus. And so Regent Albrecht, you asked about, you know, if a program is proposed on a campus that it's outside of the mission, then that's the guiding piece that really helps. And if there needs to be a change in that mission then to have that take place, then that's the avenue. But the mission really sets the direction, and it really does drive what happens on a campus, and everything from academic programs to faculty to resources and that kind of thing. So anyway, these guys are ready now. The mission reviews, you'll notice the documentation, there's a template that each of the campuses presents, consistency in the data, and really, again, this is the board's chance to really ask questions of each of the campuses about what their current mission is. And for a couple of campuses, Montana Tech and UM Western, they're also asking right after this for a change in their mission statement. Thank you.
Chair Robinson, members of the board, for the record, my name is Doug Abbott. I'm the Provost and Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at Montana Tech. What an honor it is to follow the recognition of Dr. Calloway. That's what we are all about here in higher education in Montana. I know that a number of our faculty at Tech have interactions and collaborations with Ray. So I'm here for the next 10 minutes. I know that Chancellor Blackheader has been in Butte long enough because he pulled me aside in the hallway yesterday. He says, Abbott, you've got 10 minutes, not a second more. He says, think of yourself as a body at an Irish wake. They need you to have the party, but they don't expect you to say much. So he's getting acclimated to Butte. But in these next 10 minutes, what I want to do is to remind the Board of Regents, educate the Board of Regents, the newer regents, and inform the Board of Regents of what a special university you as the Board of Regents and the taxpayers of the state of Montana have in Butte, America. Here's our mission statement. Very pedestrian, but it works. More to come on that later. Dr. Thornton mentioned the core themes to help guide mission fulfillment and whatnot. These are the 4 themes. The bottom 2 are getting cut off that the board approved within the last 2 years. This is the meat of the presentation. Montana Tech is unique. The National Center for Educational Statistics has identified 4,599 Title IV degree-granting institutions in the U.S., serving 13 million students. Of those 4,599 universities, Montana Tech is one of 2 that offers geophysical engineering at the undergraduate level. One of 4 that offers extractive metallurgy and mineral processing. One of 14 that offers mining engineering. One of 17 that offers petroleum engineering. Very, very unique, very, very well positioned. We're also not only an engineering school. I find great comfort in knowing that when I have the big one, that the nurse at St. James Hospital in all likelihood will be a Montana Tech graduate. 100% placement on our NCLEX nursing exam. 90% acceptance for our students that are interested in attending professional schools. And selected as an ACES top 200 institution. Major Robinson served as the Master of Ceremonies, keynote speaker at the Region 1 ACES conference last year that was held on the Montana Tech campus. Academic profile, there's a number of programs that we offer. The bottom one on the list, the PhD, the board was, we are very appreciative of the board giving Montana Tech the opportunity to offer the collaborative PhD with our colleagues in Bozeman and Missoula. Our tagline at Montana Tech, one of our taglines, is ordinary to extraordinary. And it's the Montana Tech education that allowed the child of a nurse from Great Falls, Montana, to grow up and become the CEO of ConocoPhillips, allowed the son of a high school teacher from Cheney, Washington, to be the one person that figured out how to plug the oil well blowout in the Gulf of Mexico. A Montana Tech kid did that. The son of a garbage man from Billings, Montana, who was the lead engineer on the Channel project connecting France and England. And the son of a farmer from central Montana to grow up and become the vice president of marketing at Coldwater Creek and Overstocks.com. Our student profile, Montana Tech is not for everybody. Our students are driven, high achieving. Chancellor Blackheader has a great quote. Students do not come to Montana Tech to discover themselves. They've got a pretty good idea of what they want to do when they grow up, when they come to Montana Tech. 55 Montana counties, 42 states, 24 foreign countries. I need to comment on the 24 foreign countries. I understand there's a big football game coming this weekend. I always thought that Tech Carroll was the biggest game in Montana, but I guess I'm wrong on that. But I would like to inform people in the room that if I'm not mistaken, the highest ranked athletic team in the state of Montana is Montana Tech's hockey team. We are number 5 in the US. In the last year, our boys have defeated the University of Washington, Boise State, the University of Wyoming, UC San Jose State, BYU, Montana State 6 times. And Missoula has stopped playing us. So it doesn't hurt that of the 24 foreign countries, we've got 126 Canadian students. So, student profile. That first bullet is very, very important. 71% of our students graduate in STEM majors. We offer a Bachelor of Science degree in liberal studies. Let that sink in. I'll say it again. A Bachelor of Science degree in liberal studies. 93% placement rate. There you'll see the average starting salaries of our 4 colleges and schools on the campus. Enrollment by college. As you saw this morning, Montana Tech has seen very solid, slow, consistent growth. Growth in our grad school, growth in the School of Mines and Engineering. You'll notice the dotted line has a downward dip recently, where the green line has an upward trend. In a nutshell, that's college now. Our students that were in the College of Letters and Science and Professional Studies have moved to the Highlands College. Graduate education. Enrollment's up 17%. We're happy to report 4 of the 9 doctoral students in the PhD in material science are at Montana Tech. Workforce development. Montana Tech has been involved in both the round 3 and round 4 of the TAC grant. Montana Tech's role in round 4 of the TAC grant is going to be the institution that provides the BSN completion piece to the anticipated growth in the ASN nursing. Two interesting things going on the South Campus right now. Our faculty have worked with our friends in Dillon, and we have developed block scheduling for remedial education. Calculus is the gateway course at Montana Tech for all the engineering. And if a student starts out at the lowest math class, it will take them 5 semesters to get to the calculus level. So as a means to accelerate that, we are using the model that's been very successful in Dillon, and we are trying to get students through the remedial education much quicker. Exemplary service, 2 bullets of note on there. Our Highlands College students have built 20 Habitat for Humanity homes in the last 4 years. That's incredible. And the third bullet, our Institute for Educational Opportunities, which is our outreach arm, have worked with 14,000 students and teachers in the last year. Campus growth. Our campus is growing. Those are the buildings you see before you that are either new or have seen extensive renovation, thanks in part to the Regents' efforts and to the legislature. The Frank and Ann Gilmore building, it's important to note, that is the first privately funded building on the Montana Tech campus. And the bottom bullet, the Natural Resources Building, is the $10 million that we had to come up with a $5 million match in order to, $5 million from the state. Montana Tech had to raise $5 million. Can I tell them? And we soon will tell you about the $5 million that we were responsible for raising. Campus research. We are an $11 million enterprise through faculty, the Montana Bureau of Mines. We anticipate our research to expand. That green bar, it's the first thing you look at, that the dollars awarded a little bit down this year from where we were last year, but a number of the proposals that are in that first tier of colors, the blues, those have yet to be funded, so we expect our dollars awarded to be larger than they were in 2013. In 2010, when our regional accrediting body came to Montana Tech, one of the commendations that our campus received was our involvement of undergraduates in research. There's a picture of Mary McLaughlin, who was named the Kerr Undergraduate Research Mentor just a couple weeks ago. I think the Regents are aware of the accolades that Montana Tech has received. Everybody from Forbes, U.S. News and World Report, Money Magazine. But I want to point out this slide right here. I had to send a revised version of this PowerPoint to Ochi. This is a ranking by CollegeNet and PayScale. It's called the Social Mobility Index. And what the Social Mobility Index does, it's computed from 5 variables: published tuition, percentage of student body whose family are below the U.S. median income, graduation rate, reported salary after graduation, and the endowment. So Montana Tech is ranked number 1 by this Social Mobility Index, which in essence what it says is first generation type students, if they come to Montana Tech, they will get what do they get? They'll get a great degree. Let's just leave it at that. The Washington Post. So there's some schools you've heard of on that list. The Washington Post published this about a month ago. Colleges with the highest starting salaries, and I don't know if you can read that. Montana Tech is number 6 on the list, with the U.S. Naval Academy, Harvey Mudd, West Point, Caltech, and MIT ranked in front of us. 3 of our 4 peer institutions are below us: Colorado School of Mines, Missouri University of Science and Technology, and South Dakota Tech. Our alumni are making an impact. That slide says 1,000 words, so I'll stop. In closing, Montana Tech is the state of Montana's STEM institution. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Doug, and we appreciate your presentation. I'd like to ask the committee members if there are any questions that we have for our presenters today. Yes, Regent Sheehy.
I just have a comment. I've told you this before, I'm so impressed with your collaboration with the other units, especially with respect to your ideas about getting kids to calculus faster and using that block system. I'm really anxious to see how that works for you. From what I've heard at these meetings before, it's combining 2 different ideas. It makes so much sense, and I really applaud you for going to your sister institution and seeking out that information, because I think it's going to be a great success for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Sheehy. I do have a question regarding the presentation that we've heard and the information that we've received in our packets. This particular action item is the review, the mission review, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that review. Are you planning on covering it in this next section?
The next item.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we'll hold off on that then and cover it in the next one. Any other comments from the committee at all? Any other comments or questions from the board? Regarding this particular item then, item B, is it the will of the committee then to move this forward for action tomorrow? Okay. All right, so moved. Let's move on then to item C, and if you're presenting on that as well, we'll just go right into item C, which is the statement revision.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chair Robinson, member of the board, this item before you now is a request for approval for Montana Tech to revise its mission statement. And I want to make sure that the board is aware what we're proposing here is a mission revision. We are not out, a mission statement revision, I'm sorry. We are not changing our mission. We're requesting a revision to our mission statement. Dr. Thornton talked about how mission statements oftenly are organically grown or evolve organically. And what has happened over the course of the past number of years, we have had accrediting bodies, leaders of higher education in Montana tell us that we are missing the opportunity to have a mission statement that truly describes what Montana Tech is all about. So numerous stars aligned with the change in the accreditation process by Northwest, the arrival of a new chancellor. The campus went through a process of internal analysis of who are we? What do we do? The resulting mission statement is a result of that process. Over the course of the last year, Chancellor Blackheader and I visited every academic department at Montana Tech as well as Highlands College to talk to them about our strategic planning process. And oftentimes when a new CEO comes on board, one of the first things they do is they undertake a strategic planning overview, review, and implementation. So this mission statement is a result of that process. It's been vetted by Faculty Senate, ASMT, Staff Senate, Dean's Council, the Cabinet, and we believe that this mission statement does a very good job of explaining what Montana Tech, who we are, what we do. So I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Chancellor Abbott.
I just got a promotion. Thank you, Regent.
Oh, I'm sorry. Provost Abbott. Yes, do you have a question, Regent Williams?
Thank you. You had mentioned that it was vetted through all of those different entities, and I was curious what types of feedback you were given when they were vetted, if this was after it was written or during the process, and what types of things you were hearing back from those folks.
The statement itself was developed, as most things are in higher ed, by a committee. And various entities gave us, well, let me take that back. The initial vetting process, we published our strategic planning document, and in that document, we identified this mission statement. And we asked for comments, concerns on the mission statement. And to my knowledge, nothing of substance rose to the level. Obviously, some faculty members, they read, for example, the mission statement, and they said, I can't see my department in that mission statement. But
Are there any other questions from our committee members? And it doesn't look like it, so any other board members? We have Regent Johnstone.
Yes, thank you. Could you comment, earlier you stated that you had a liberal arts program and that it was liberal, I think, a Bachelor of Science in Liberal Arts. Could you comment about how that fits into your new mission statement?
well, it's gonna be applied in a couple of those areas: exemplary undergraduate education, theory and practice. One of the neat things about Montana Tech, when it comes to natural resources, I believe we are a one-stop shop. We have degrees that can locate the natural resources, whether it be mineral deposits, oil, etc. We have degrees that can extract the commodities. We have degrees that can talk policy on the extraction of the degrees. We have extraction of the resources. We have degrees that deal with safely getting those resources out of the ground. So from the liberal studies perspective, that's how I would characterize the LS degree, talking policy.
Any other comments from any of the regents at all? Any other questions or comments from the campus administrators? Any other comments from the public? I do have one particular comment to make, because we'll be taking a look at a couple more of these, and in looking at yours, I see how you've refined it by expanding it. And it seems kind of contradictory, but it really starts to reflect exactly what Montana Tech has to offer. Because I think we'll see another direction later on, but I think each campus has to take a look at that and understand where your unique status is and what you have to offer. So I support this moving forward, and thank you for all of the work that you put into this, because I know that it takes a lot of work to sit down and review this and have it vetted a number of different times, so we appreciate that. All right, and so I'll ask the committee members, if it's the will of the committee, to go ahead and move this forward for a vote tomorrow. All right, so moved. Thank you very much. Let's move on to item D now, and if you would, Deputy Commissioner Moisey, if you could speak to that item.
Thank you, Chair Robinson, members of the board. The second, and I want to step back a little bit, the Commissioner pointed out that the 2 flagship campuses presented their mission review in the September meeting, and so we're asking each of the 4-year campuses to do that at this meeting. The 2-year campuses will then go through a similar process in the March meeting, and I believe they will be in the 2-year committee. There's 3 items related to this mission review for Western, and I've asked Provost Ulrich and Chancellor Evans to do the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Robinson and members of the board. I've been at Montana Western now for a total of 28 years. The first 10 years were as a faculty member. The last 18 plus have been as a chief academic officer. During that time frame, I have seen a great deal of change. However, 27 years ago, I saw a bit of a change. That was my first year as a tenure track faculty member. That was a bit disconcerting. At that time, there was a full-blown effort to close Montana Western. And with the support of the community and the campus, we brokered a compromise that we became an affiliate campus of U of M. We were the first affiliated campus. We lost our president, replaced with a provost. We lost most of our academic programs, including our 1 graduate program. And perhaps most importantly, we lost our football team. I think it's been good for us in the long run because we have rebuilt from scratch to a very highly regarded institution. But that in 1987, we lost 20% of our students. We went down from 1,000 to about 800 FTE, but the campus and community regrouped, and we gradually added academic programs and returned to the same number of students that we had back in 1987. That took us 14 years to accomplish that, however. Since we, and that those were stepwise improvements, incremental changes, we addressed the board and got all those approved. But the biggest change that I've been a part of, and I'm very glad that it exceeded all expectations, was a transformative adoption of Experience One. And that resulted in a dramatic increase of student and university success. In November 2011, we began formulating our new strategic plan and mission statement. And this presentation will address the next 3 items, even though I know those 3 items will be considered individually by the board. So way back in 2011, November, I was in charge of a group that was formulating the new strategic plan, and the first thing we did was look at our mission statement and thought maybe this could be simplified into a 1-sentence mission statement. So that dates way back to 2011. We had talk with a larger group of faculty and committees, and eventually that got went to 2 or 3 sentences. But then we decided eventually to go back to a 1-sentence mission statement, very similar to what we had in November of 2011. And this was after exhaustive conversations with all constituencies. We approved that on campus in early 2014, but we were told that we had to wait until this fall to submit those for the board for approval, possible board approval. Our new proposed mission statement concisely focuses on our strongest feature, The University of Montana Western differentiates itself and achieves academic excellence by sustaining a culture of concentrated experiential education. And we believe that that truly separates us from what the other campuses are trying to do. We have very few unique programs, but the way we offer our programs is uniquely successful, and we're very happy that we do those types of things. We are also asking approval for our core themes. We have 3 of those. Those were developed for our year 1 report for Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities. Number 1 is continuously improve undergraduate education and experiential learning. We do this by being both a comprehensive baccalaureate and a full-service 2-year college. We take both of these roles very seriously. Number 2 is maximize campus-wide support for student success and completion. XWOD aids us greatly. One of the things it does is it greatly improves attendance in class, and it really improves student engagement in their own learning process, so that the number of students that are missing class or failing to complete a class has really gone down. At the same time, we've added increased student services, student support services, such as improved advising and learning centers. Number 3, foster responsible campus efficiency and stewardship of resources. And we've seen dramatic improvements in energy efficiency as well as aesthetics, largely driven by the efforts of our Vice Chancellor, Susan Briggs. She's been here for very much of the same tenure that I've been in my leadership role. We've also seen dramatic improvement in the efficiency of use of human resources and other resources on campus. We believe our students receive graduate level learning at undergraduate university within our undergraduate programs. And this really prepares them for graduate professional school or going out into the workforce. They have learned things by actually doing those things. Many of the data, the next few slides, were provided to us by Deputy Commissioner Tyler Trevor, or is that Trevor Tyler? Keep getting that mixed up. But Tyler Trevor has actually been a very good supporter of us. He actually has bought a house in Dillon. And that's where he's housing his 2 children, one of which is already at Western, and one will be coming to our campus next year. So he has a vested interest in our success. And in the 10-year period, under consideration since we adopted Experience 1, we had a 41 increase in students. Well, at the same time, the Montana University system was only increasing 10%. And this was the highest increase of any 4-year campus in the MUS. We've also had very high fall-to-fall freshman retention. The best improvement by far, I believe, in the Montana University system over that 10-year period. And it peaked at 74%. It's down slightly now, but still at very respectable levels, especially for an virtually open enrollment institution such as ours. We've also seen an 80% increase in the number of graduates. That also is the best in the Montana University system. We also have a 96% of freshmen who start a course, complete a course. And that, again, is very high. Students get engaged in their courses and they don't want to drop out. And if they are leaning in that direction, our faculty are keenly attuned to administering to their needs. We also have seen a 55% graduation rate, that for the first time this year, number of baccalaureates, 4-year degrees that were completed in a 4-year period of time. That, again, is exceptionally high, remarkably high. We also have a very high percentage of our graduates who are employed in Montana within 1 year after their graduation. 80% of those are employed in graduation Montana. That rises to 88% of our teacher education program graduates employed in Montana. And you can see by the starting salary, $29,200, most of those are employed full-time within the teaching profession. So we're very pleased with that. But we believe our students best tell our story, and you may have seen a couple of these spots on television already, but we believe that they very impressively show what Montana Western means to our students.
My name is Ava Duncan. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and my major is natural horsemanship. I like the Experience One program because it's unique and it's innovative. I went and studied wild horses at the Pryor Mountain Range a week before school started, and I get credits for it, and I'm in a class for it right now studying everything we learned in our whole trip. Honestly, this program is what's giving me a shot at having a career in the horse industry, and for that, I'm so grateful, and it's such a privilege to be here.
In the next video clip, if you look very carefully, you will see our future Chancellor, Beth Weatherby, coming out of a building. She was just a candidate, one of 5 finalist candidates at that time, so this was just happenstance that she happened to wander into our commercial. Do we have that second video? Oh, there it was.
The environmental sciences program here at Western seemed like just a natural fit for me. I love being outside, and this is the chance to get hands-on experience, be out in the field and travel not just throughout the area, but throughout the state and even out of the country. Experience One is great for really gaining the real-world skills that you need to get a job and start building a career. This is your chance to really shine, and that's something that I think the college experience is all about.
Well, thank you, and we hope you enjoyed the experience. And with that, I'll stand for further questions.
Thank you, Provost Ulrich. We appreciated your presentation. And one thing, a question I have to begin with is, you said you started the strategic planning process in 2011?
Yes, that was when the Chancellor appointed the task force, and we started work.
At what point did it become obvious to those working on this that a mission revision was needed? I was curious about the process.
A mission statement revision, because we don't believe our mission has changed as much as our statement. There's pretty wide consensus that we need to review our mission statement, and that at the very first meeting, I think it was identified by this task force that we needed to change our mission statement, hopefully one that more concisely tells our story, what we are all about, so that people can really remember that and take it to heart rather than the rather long mission statement that we had previously.
And in revising it, obviously, as we saw with Montana Tech, theirs kind of went in the opposite direction to really expand upon what they had. This goes in the opposite direction of what they did. Could you talk about that process? Was it laborious to get to, or was it pretty obvious to those working on it that this is who we are now?
No, I think there was pretty wide consensus on who we're about. And that we did tweak the language quite a few different times, but in the end, we had something that received unanimous approval by our University Council Strategic Planning Committee. and was approved by our chancellor back in February before he resigned. But we then found out that we couldn't submit this until this fall. So we've had this developed for some time now, and we've never heard any objections to this mission statement that are anyway valid.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Provost Ulrich. Committee members, do we have any questions or comments at all? Yes, Regent Sheehy.
Thank you, Chair. Provost, I have a couple of questions about the ads, but before I get to that, I want to say that I think your high school football team might qualify as a college football team.
They're pretty good, yeah.
You've been beating up on all of us for a lot of years now.
One more game.
I want to ask about the ads. Are those showing on TV?
Yes, they have started. I saw one recently in a football game, I believe, and others have seen both of them. We have some very good pricing that the networks are coming up with. I think it only costs us like $75 per 30-second spot, so we've taken advantage of that marketplace.
I really like the ads. I do think that the Experience One concept is still a secret in Montana. And I'm wondering if there's any way that you could hook up with counselors in the high schools in Montana. I can't tell you how many kids, as soon as I heard about this program, and I only heard about it because I'm a regent.
Okay.
I know so many kids that their parents would say, that's how my kid learns. That's what he needs.
Yeah.
Quite often he, sometimes she. But I think it's just such a special thing that you're doing, and I'm not sure that our Montana high schools know about it. And I know that I just don't feel like it's out at all in Billings. And I don't know how it is. It's totally anecdotal what I'm telling you, but that's my thought. So I'm really glad to see the ads. I'd encourage any kind of outreach you could do with the high school counselors and the K-12 community, because I think you are doing something so unique and so special and targeted to a certain learner. I'm really excited about it. So
thank you,
congratulations.
Thank you.
I really want to congratulate you on your retention rates and your graduation rates. It's proving itself in the numbers.
Yeah, they impressed us as well, so thank you, Regent Sheehy.
Thank you, Regent Sheehy. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Any comments or questions from the other Board of Regents? From the administrators at all? Do we have any questions? And any from the public? All right. Well, before you leave, what I'd like to do is we have 3 items, and I appreciate you going through all 3 of those in your presentation. But we need to act on each one of those. So regarding item D, the review, is it the will of the committee to move this forward for a vote tomorrow? So moved. All right. And also item E, the statement, mission statement revision. Is it the will of the committee to move this forward to a vote tomorrow? Thank you, so moved. And also with item E for University of Montana Western for the core themes, is it the will of the committee to move this forward for a vote? Thank you on all 3. And thank you for your presentation. And again, thank you as well for all of the work that you put into this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, before we move on to the next item, I do want to mention we are a little behind schedule. We want to continue to move through, but if anybody starts to turn blue, you need to go to the bathroom or something like that, please just go ahead and take a walk. Or if you need a little break or something like that. But I'd like to keep moving on this if we could. I think we're making some headway here. Let's move now to item G, and this one is a mission review for MSU Billings. And Deputy Commissioner Moisey, would you like to do some introductions?
Thank you, Chair Robinson. The presentation of MSU Billings mission review will be presented by Provost Pagano, and if there's questions for Chancellor Nook, looks like he will be willing to take those.
Thank you very much, Deputy Commissioner Moisey and Regent ARSA Committee Chair Robinson, other members of the Commissioner staff, Board of Regents, and fellow MSU colleagues. It does give me great pleasure today on behalf of Montana State University Billings to provide you with a brief insight into our stated mission and, more specifically, outcomes of our recent 3-year mission review. Over the past 3 years, MSUB has embarked on a process which not only included a thorough review of our stated mission, but also included an initiative to review and then re-embrace our 4 core themes, and then complete a comprehensive university and community strategic planning process, all centered around these 4 core themes, which this board approved in January 2013. Our stated mission, our stated core purpose and mission are fairly simple. The core purpose is to assure that all members of the university community reach their individual potential. Now, I believe our new chancellor, Dr. Mark Nooks, states this in a very poignant manner as he communicates this idea across our campus and across our community by stating that our job, meaning us at MSUB, are to meet each and every student exactly where they are and then together work with them to achieve their ultimate success. And furthermore, MSUB accomplishes this mission this purpose through a mission characterized by 4 items: strong commitment to teaching excellence, support for individual learning, engagement in civic responsibility, and intellectual, cultural, social, and economic community enhancement. Now, next slide, please. Because of our urban setting and our regional comprehensive designation and our deep-rooted connection to the land-grant focus of our Montana State University affiliation, all of our programs are based on the employment needs of our community and larger service region. We have the 4-year university campus, which serves the needs of business, healthcare, education, culture and scientific careers, as well as pre-professional preparation. We have the 2-year City College campus to prepare students for technical, healthcare, business-related careers, as well as our new emerging emphasis in comprehensive transfer education. City College also does much of the heavy lifting with respect to developmental education and also MSUB's growing early college developmental education and through dual enrollment and the University Connections program. Our university campus also has a very robust array of career-focused graduate programs tailored to support the needs of the working professionals in our community. Then embedded right in the midst of downtown Billings is MSUB Extended Campus that is poised to partner to conveniently deliver the workforce needs of Billings and surrounded area. Lastly, MSUB continues to be Montana's frontrunner in online education, which complements our Access mission very well. Now, one special note, during the 2009 Northwest visit and 2010 follow-up, it was recommended that let me start again. During the 2009 visit and 2010 follow-up, our campus was acknowledged for admirable commitment to serving these educational needs of our region. However, it was recommended that we take a step back to evaluate how we better match our resources to our offerings. So therefore, during our strategic planning process, we kept our mission firm. However, we charged ourselves with the academic program prioritization process, which I'll have an opportunity to talk about a little bit later in this meeting. Next slide. Now, this is by far the best part. The student base that we attract at MSUB due to this Access mission and core themes that I've just described is our best part. Our student base is quite diverse and in many ways mirrors the diversity of the Billings community and surrounding region. Due to this diversity, MSUB has provided targeted support programs to meet the needs of these special populations and help assure their success. Our student base is a bit older. A larger percent attend part-time. More tend to already have families, and many carry on several jobs as compared to the student base at the 2 MUS flagship institutions. Also, unusually high percentages also stay and live and work in Billings or the state of Montana. We really believe that our student base is what makes our campus what it is today. We are proud of the accomplishments of our students, and after our review, we feel that our MSUB mission is fulfilling its mission to serve the needs and furthermore, the educational needs of the citizens of this great state of Montana. Now let me briefly introduce you to just one of these students, but we think a very special student. Next slide. Elizabeth Mullins is a first-generation college student born in Talala, Oklahoma. Although her love of science was instilled in her at a very early age by her grandfather, Elizabeth did not think college was in her future. But to our good fortune, it was. Just listen to how she has been described by our university honors director, Dr. David Craig. Elizabeth is unique. She has mastered the indispensable ingredients of hard work, discipline, and dedication, and possesses the strength of character that, combined with her talent and intelligence, will make for a very distinguished career. And distinguished Elizabeth is. Elizabeth is MSUB's first Goldwater Scholar, one of 283 students nationwide, and only one of 4 in Montana to achieve this high honor. Elizabeth is a non-traditional student, a veteran, a Dean's List recipient, and a member of ASMSUB student government. Let's hear from her now.
Good morning. Although I couldn't make it to meet you guys in person, I wanted to express to you today my sincere thanks for allowing me to speak. What is unique about MSUB are the opportunities available to non-traditional students and to veterans. I served in the United States Navy for 9 years, first as a Hebrew linguist and then as a corpsman. Almost 4 years ago, I finally made the transition from the military to civilian life so that I could pursue a career in science and in medicine. I had spent a good portion of my career being protested against or stigmatized for being in the military. Because many campuses across the country support that kind of political expression, I assumed my college career would be spent having to defend myself as a veteran. Furthermore, like most non-traditional students, I did not have a typical childhood. Looking back from where I now stand as a Goldwater Scholar and a soon-to-be graduate, I know that I possess the knowledge and the skills in order to survive the rigors of academia. However, I did not know any of that at the time that I left the military. You see, when I was growing up, I was never thought of as being smart. In fact, I spent my early years in speech therapy and in special education classes. Whereas others in my class were reading, I was still trying to tell the difference between a G and a J. Every teacher that I had from kindergarten until the 5th grade held conferences with my mother, who was a single parent, trying to figure out what kind of learning disability I must have had. By the end of the year, each one had threatened to fail me. In turn, every year I worked hard in order to comprehend just enough material to pass that grade. Still, from those experiences, I learned to be thankful for what I had and to see the good in even the most difficult situations. Despite those setbacks, I continued to work hard at school and at my job, as well as at our family ranch. When it came time for other kids to graduate high school and to go to college, I stood back and never applied. For one, I did not know how to apply. No one told me that I needed to take the SAT or the ACT in order for colleges to notice me. Instead, I looked at the other students around me and assumed that they were simply more qualified than I was. Although I had a good GPA, I was still convinced that I didn't have what it took to succeed at a university. For someone who grew up wearing $3 shoes from Hobby Lobby, which couldn't even always be replaced, and who spent significant portions of their life living off of ramen and spaghetti, the thought of amassing thousands of dollars of debt to attend college was out of the question. So although I wanted to study medicine and science at that time, I decided to work hard and to put my service to good use in service to the United States Armed Forces in the United States Navy. In 2011, after 2 deployments and 9 years of honorable service, I left active duty to pursue my dream. To be honest, I had no idea what I was getting into. I still remember when, as a freshman, I told my advisor that I wanted to study medicine. He told me that I should get straight A's. I didn't think I could get straight A's, though. After all, I had been out of school for almost 10 years at that time. How on earth could I get all A's in my classes? That is where the help of the faculty and of other non-traditional students came to my aid. You see, what makes MSUB unique is the ability of the faculty to reach out to their students to help them succeed. My brother, a science major at a major university in Oklahoma, sometimes had 300 students in his classes. His professors didn't recognize his face, let alone his name. However, I got to know all of my professors, and they got to know me as well. They never turned me away when I came to ask them for help with a question or with a difficult concept. During the start of my sophomore year, I petitioned for and was granted permission to work in one of the school's research labs, even though those spaces were normally reserved for juniors and for seniors. While working there, I found my passion. I knew that if I had been at a larger school, I wouldn't have been able to have gotten that opportunity. In fact, one of the other students who worked in the research lab with me transferred from a different Montana university because she wasn't able to gain research experience at that particular institute. Soon I will embark on the next chapter of my journey into research and into medicine. Although new challenges will arise, I can rely on the strength and the knowledge that I obtained here as a student at Montana State University Billings. I want to thank the Montana University System for providing a wonderful learning environment for all types of students, and thank you for allowing MSUB to fulfill its mission of providing access and excellence.
I'm going to let Elizabeth have the last word. Questions?
All right, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate that. I'd like to ask our committee members regarding this particular item, do we have any questions or comments that would, okay. Regent Tuss, please.
Yeah, I do have a question. I'm not sure if this would be for you folks from MSU Billings, or perhaps Deputy Commissioner Moisey, but I was a little surprised, and maybe I shouldn't be, that 60% of your student body are first-generation students. Is that typical in the system? That seems high to me, but I don't know what the stats are.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. It is higher than the average institution, and I think it's because it's an urban campus, and not if we look at the two-year schools, it's pretty similar. But in terms of four-year, that is a pretty high percentage.
My only other comment is perhaps when we approach the legislature, that young lady should be in line, speaking on behalf of the university system.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions at all? No? Any further questions from the board? Any questions from the administrators? Any from the public? Hearing none, is it of the will of the committee to move this item forward for a vote tomorrow? Thank you very much. So moved. Let's move on to our last mission review for Montana State University Northern. And if you would please, Neil, introduce our guest.
Thank you, Chair Robinson, for the mission review presentation for MSU Northern. I believe Provost Rugg will give the presentation, and Chancellor Kegel will be there to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Moisey, Chairman Robinson, esteemed board members, committee members, and commissioners. Happy to be with you today. I'm going to present our slides and give you a brief overview of Montana State University Northern's mission. There is our mission statement. I am not going to read it to you. Applause may follow. This is all contained for you in the material that that all of you have received. But we also have our mission statement, which is more brief, more succinct, more to the point. And really for my presentation today, I'm going to focus on our three core themes that are also contained in the mission review document. But from those core themes, we developed 9 distinct characteristics that I'm going to focus on for the remainder of my presentation. So at Montana State University Northern, we can frame our slide a little better. One of our distinctive characteristics is that we are known as a teaching institute and have been for many years. We have drifted away from that just a little bit. I'm sad to say, but delighted that we are moving to bring that back. We have a long tradition of training teachers for Montana, especially the Highline. Our niche market is the northern and north central part of Montana, and that will continue to be the case. Our secondary education emphasis areas, some of you may recall, were on our moratorium list. Those are being removed. I'm going through a very focused process of bringing back our secondary education emphasis areas, at least the ones that make sense. And we have 3 distinct campus locations, Havre, the main campus, on the Great Falls campus at Great Falls MSU, and in Lewistown. We serve a very diverse student population. We're very proud of the fact that 14.1% of our student population are Native American. We also have students from Canada, Mexico, South America, Asia, and Hawaii. Although Hawaii isn't a true international destination, it is a pretty long trip for our students to come in. Those students are immersed in our population. They intermix on all events that we have on our campus, and we're very proud of that fact. 35% of our students are first-time, first-generation, so coattailing on my colleague Mark's presentation, this is not unusual for the rural campuses, 35%. And yes, they do struggle. Yes, we do spend a lot of time and effort on our remediation. We don't call it that, obviously, our developmental courses. But it's a necessary fact, and I think we're doing a very good job with it. We provide a variety of academic programs. We have 2 certificate programs, 12 associate degree programs, 15 bachelor degree programs, 17 minors, 2 graduate degrees, 1 in counseling and 1 in teaching and learning, and 5 totally online degree programs. We also have awarded 2 honorary doctorates in our history, so we could add those to the list as well. Providing technical programs, again, we talk about our niche market and what we do, what we're proud of. One of those, obviously, is that we do a lot in the area of technical programs, and that, again, is one of our niche markets, and it's something that we focus on. This particular event, delighted to say that you may notice a couple of our cast of characters up there. President Cruzado, and front and center in the bright white shirt, of course, is our own Chairman Paul Tuss. The white shirt, incidentally, Paul was being very chivalrous at the time and gave his suit coat to his wife because it was a very windy and blustery day in Havre, which is quite uncommon. You know, it wasn't our normal 60-degree balmy weather. And so Chairman Tuss bravely gave his coat to his wife, and there he is, front and center in our picture. So in case you couldn't find him, he's pretty easy to pick out. But this was a very, very momentous date for us. As most of you know, we are pursuing a new auto diesel technology center. The funding drive is underway. We are, is it still 92%, Chancellor? Yeah, we're inching up on that. So on this day, we were able to acknowledge the fact that so far we have collected $3,150,000. We have at least 2 significant donors that are inches away from inking their check. The check is not in the mail, but it's close. And so we're getting very close to our goal. We believe very strongly that that building will be underway. We will be breaking ground for it very, very soon. We're uniquely positioned to offer the best diesel technology program in the country. Many of us believe we're already there, but we're going to continue to prove that. We also provide professional programs. Our nursing program provides graduates to a specific niche market, rural healthcare, and this is something that we have focused on very specifically recently, and that is that we have a very strong nursing program. In fact, the number of majors in nursing and the number of majors in diesel are kind of neck and neck, which one is the #1 program. It's kind of like the football game coming up on Saturday, which one's coming first. But those 2 programs are very, very strong. But we realize that our niche market, where we are providing the nurses, is really, should be rural healthcare, and that should be our focus. So that's what we're looking at. We provide a majority of public and private school teachers to the Highline, and we have the Montana Environmental Training Center. Many of you are familiar with our motorcycle safety program that goes on year-round, very active in the summer, but it truly is a 12-month program, and that's based out of Havre. We provide applied research opportunities. We have a very active institutional research board. All of our graduate research studies are run through the institutional research board that includes faculty, staff, community members, and student members to review any institutional proposal that involves testing of human subjects. The two popular graduate programs I mentioned to you earlier in counseling and in teaching and learning, both of those programs fill and close almost immediately at the beginning of each semester. So obviously there's room for expansion in those programs. And we have just opened a new Office of Institutional Research. We have an institutional research, and we did this with internal staffing. We did some shifting around of staff. We did not seek additional revenue for this, but we have a director of institutional research and an office of institutional research for the first time in our history. We promote a very student-centered environment, 14-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio that we're very proud of, many small classes and labs. We have 20 different student clubs and organizations. And our Student Government Association is very active. In this photo, you see more than 20 students who are members of our Student Government Association, the Associated Students of MSU. Some of you met our president at the last meeting. He was my kind of backup to answer the tough questions when we were presenting our proposal, Andrew Potter. And he's doing a very good job with our program and with our student government. Very energetic group. We're expanding our student learning experiences. Classes are offered in face-to-face, online, and hybrid learning environments. And in many cases, I'm striving to get to the point where the students can choose between these delivery formats for every course we offer. So right now, we're pretty close. A lot of them are offered in all of those formats, but my goal is that every class is. Student support services are very strong, providing a number of services to our students. The Student Success Center is located in the library, along with disability services and testing services. We've created a one-stop shop now with our Student Success Center, disability service and testing services. We're in the process of upgrading the lab in the basement of the library to be our testing center so that there's one place for all testing to take place, and it will have the enhanced computing technology to handle praxis and all of the special testing needs that we have. Rather than having them scattered around on campus, they're all in one place. And then veteran service support services, we just hired a half-time veterans services coordinator, and we just had the grand opening of our new Veteran Services Lounge on Veterans Day. So we're very proud of that as well. We also provide a culturally enriched environment. And I might point out the center of this slide, that individual who is probably acting, although she can be a character. This is our newest staff member. This is Rachel Dean, and she is the new executive assistant to the chancellor. So when she's not on stage, she's serving our chancellor. Montana Actors Theater, many of you are familiar with MAT, with 3 locations throughout the state. Primarily out of Havre, but they go around to other parts of the state throughout the year. We have concerts for students on a very regular basis. We have the MSU Northern Community Orchestra, MSU Northern Community Choir, and the Chancellor's Lecture Series, all as part of our cultural enrichment on our campus. Our collegiate sports, we have 7 intercollegiate sports for men and women. Wrestling has nabbed 6 national titles and 12 regional titles. Men's basketball has 6 conference titles to their credit. Women's basketball has 1 national championship and 14 conference titles. Women's volleyball has 2 conference titles, and we have 209 NAIA All-American student athletes. So we're pretty proud of that. Provide lifelong learning experiences to our students and to our community, both, through continuing education for a variety of professions, cabin fever courses for anyone interested, special workshops and seminars throughout the year. And you see we have our governor there at our ceremony. Stimulating economic development. We're recognized for excellence in programs such as diesel technology, education, and nursing. In addition to all of our other program areas, those are the most noteworthy and also the most student population in those programs. We partner with a variety of community and external entities to enhance our collaborative learning, community leadership program, the internships, co-ops, practica, and externships, as well as community service opportunities. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to entertain any questions. Thank you, Chairman Robson.
Thank you, Provost Rugg. We appreciate your presentation and want to congratulate you on the Autodiso Technology Center fundraising. We know the challenge that's been put forward to your campus and your community, and want to congratulate you for that, for the efforts that you've made.
Thank you.
Committee members, do we have any questions or comments at this point for this particular presentation? See none. How about any of the regents? Any comments at all? Regent Johnstone?
Chair Robinson, thank you. This is really a comment directed, I think, to Deputy Commissioner Moyes and the Commissioner, and that is really two questions, but I think they're related. One, what was the involvement of the Commissioner's office in the development of these reviews? And then secondly, did you evaluate these reviews against the university system or the Regents' strategic plan?
Regent Johnston, the answer to the first question is we do have a template that all of the campuses follow, and that really is to look at the individual components that are obviously in those reports. And again, we're trying to get consistency in terms of what the reporting of the data that supports what the mission is. And so there is a review of that when it comes to our office, and certainly those are reviewed to some degree by the chief academic officers, but most of that occurs in our office. To the second part of your question, in terms of how do these, the current board policy doesn't explicitly say that the campus mission review needs to be done in light of the Board of Regents strategic plan, but you'll notice that a lot of the campuses are talking about those strategic items, whether it's access or some of the other areas of the strategic plan. But it is a good potential as we look at maybe to try to tie those two together more explicitly. Maybe there might be some direction there in terms of doing that in a much more explicit manner.
Just one, if I might, just one other follow-up then question. So your review is more of a review of the format rather than the content. So you haven't gotten involved in questioning the specifics or the content or the substance of their reviews.
Regent Johnstone, yeah, we review the presentation in terms of here's what their campus mission is, and do the data support and the fulfillment of that mission. And so, as I said at the beginning, you were trying to get this to dovetail somewhat with the NWCCU accreditation process, and really that's part of a campus and the board approving that mission. And then the review is to really to look at the data, look at the strengths and the activities that are going on in those campuses. To are they meeting their mission? And the question for two of these campuses is that yes, they are. And for two of the campuses, there was a sense on that campus to make a change in what their mission statement was to much better reflect where they thought they were as a campus.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Johnstone.
Chairman Robinson, Regent Johnstone.
Yes.
The only thing I would add to that is I think it's very accurate. In the case of the changes, I think my office is more involved with, the trying to ferret out why the change and if that's consistent with board-approved activity on the campus. And I think to that end, we not only looked at the appropriateness of the change, but also visited with the presidents that oversee those campuses to make certain that their office and themselves were in favor of the changes that are coming forward. So I think In the everyday course, the process sort of governs that. In the case of change, we would be more involved with seeing that the mission is consistent with where we're headed.
Thank you, Regent Johnstone. Those are good questions. I do have a question, and maybe it's to the Chancellor, and that is what was your involvement in this? I know that you haven't been in your position a great deal of time, but what participation did you have before and during?
Well, the mission statement itself went through a lot of work when I was the dean, committee work. We worked on it as a college. The other college worked on it. So the statement itself has evolved through a lot of different processes, and I was directly involved with that. So
it's great to have your continuity there to help with that effort.
34 years.
Yes. Are there any other questions that we have from administrators here today? Any questions from the public? We want to thank you for your presentation. Thank you very much for all of the effort that you put into the review. If it's the will of the committee to move this forward, we shall do so. Is that all right? Okay, we'll move this item forward for a vote tomorrow. Last item, item I on our action items, is a policy revision. And I've asked Deputy Commissioner Moisey to speak to this item.
Thank you, Chair Robinson. The item I is a revision to policy 940.20, which outlines the annual tuition and fees for e-learning. And I want to give a little bit of history because that will probably address some of the questions. This board in 2003 developed the initial policy on e-learning. This is distance and online delivery of courses. In 2006, the board revisited that initial policy, and at that time, the number of courses being offered online was growing dramatically, and that was sort of that, mirroring kind of national trends. And at the time, there was a lot of work on looking at what are the appropriate charges for online courses, and the current policy is sort of an outgrowth of that work in 2006. And certainly there was a lot of discussion about what is the cost of providing online education, what is the cost of providing that to non-residents, and a lot of work went into that. So the language in the current policy, and you can see that it's up there, sets a minimum floor of 200% of the resident rate for non-resident students taking online courses. That was approved in the November 2006 meeting. So that's a long time ago in the online world. And what has happened since then is we, for a long time, continue to see a lot of growth in online courses, and then that has begun to level off, just because I think most campuses provide a lot of online courses and to some degree online programs. What we haven't seen, though, lately is a concurrent increase in the what we call online programs. And these are programs that are defined by several national organizations of programs where 80% of the content is delivered via distance or online. And the part of what came out of the 2006-2007 board action on this was to create an e-learning group, and which is made up of one representative from every campus that has the managerial or directorship role in terms of the online capacity. And I convene that group, and we meet a couple of times a year, and I challenged them about a year ago to talk about how can we strategically look at as a system of offering much more online courses. And again, this is really trying to get at one of the region's priorities of access. So these are ways to deliver academic content to people who aren't in residence on one of our campuses. And as we looked at the data, what we found is that at least for non-residents, we're not very competitive relative to our neighboring states or the WICHE states in terms of the fees we charge or the tuition we charge for online programs, and we looked at a variety of different states and what their tuition rates were, and found that we're at the highest, really, of the WICHE states. So we took a look at how could we be much more competitive in that market, and looked at those rates in different states, worked with the academic officers in the system, the finance and administrative people in the state, talked with the CEOs on the campuses about that current policy. And what you see before you is a proposal to make two changes in this policy. One is, the most noticeable one is reducing the floor rate from 200% to 125%. So that means campuses can charge 125% or more, as they currently charge 200% or more. And it also changes the focus to online programs rather than just courses. So this change is really focused on providing online programs to students no matter where they live. The lower rate is to become much more competitive for students who don't reside in the state of Montana but are shopping around online programs within the online marketplace. And so place really has less meaning there. The idea behind this, again, is so that we can become more competitive. We can have more students in those programs, and I think that will increase the opportunities for Montana residents, because we will be able to increase the number of online programs that we currently offer. And so this is coming as a proposal to, as I said, to change the focus from online courses to online programs, only for non-resident students who don't reside in the state of Montana. So they're not sitting on one of our campuses and taking other courses. And if a student is taking another online course that's not part of one of these programs, then they will be charged the current non-resident rate that the campus is charging for those. So again, it's focusing very much on those online programs. So that's the process. You know, we did a lot of work with looking at the current tuition rates that the campuses are charging, some discussion about what the cost to provide these programs are. That's a very difficult thing to get at. And really what this does is allows those campuses on a program by program basis to be able to make those financial and cost kinds of decisions. You heard this morning in the Mansfield presentation about the critical languages program. That is an example of one of the kinds of programs that this change in the policy is focused on. And so with that, if there are any questions, I will entertain those. I have a couple of other people who have worked on this in the system who might be able to answer the questions much better at the campus level, but we'll see where the questions go.
Thank you, Neil. Now we'll open it up to questions by the committee. Regent Tuss.
Thank you, Chair Robinson. Deputy Commissioner Moisey, I do have a question relative to the fiscal impact of this. Even anecdotally, do we have some sense of, I think this makes a lot of sense, by the way, but either positive or negative impact that this will have on the campuses that are currently providing these online courses?
Chair Tuss, members of the board, probably most of the analysis in that sense has occurred on the MSU Bozeman campus. And again, I think what this does is it empowers the campuses to really look on a program by program basis to be able to make that determination and set the fees where they need to. I can't imagine any campus is going to price these in a way where they're losing money on providing those programs. But in the online world, there are so many other variables that affect the cost of delivery than they do in a more traditional sense. And so there has been a lot of work on individual campuses to really look at what are the programs that would fit underneath this proposal, and then also what those rates are. So this policy isn't really dictating the rate, it's just really setting the floor, giving the campuses the leeway, I think, to price those programs within a market that is substantially different than the traditional market.
Any other questions from the committee members? Yes, Regent Sheehy.
With respect to the current policy, which provides that the rate shall be set at no less than 200% of the proposed resident tuition rate, where did we come up with the 200%? Is that a statutory mandate? Did we just decide that? Where did we get the 200% that we're trying to change to 125?
Regent Sheehy, that's a good question, and I spent a lot of time looking at that, and it isn't statutorily set, and it, I could go back to the language in the 2006 meeting, but the language there really states that we can't establish what the cost is for these programs, so we were going to use a minimum of 200% as an approximation.
But we've assured ourselves that we're lowering this to 125% wouldn't be in violation of any statutory or legislative mandate.
Regent Sheehy, correct.
Okay. I have no problem with the idea, especially after hearing today's presentation and this morning's comments. But I was a little concerned about that, how we came up with the original 200%.
President Engstrom.
Chair Robinson, members of the board, I would like to just address Regent Tuss's question about the financial impact with two examples. Basically, the financial impact is nothing but positive here, and let me tell you why. So Neil mentioned the Defense Critical Language Program, and this morning you heard about that in the Mansfield Center presentation. What we have found is many of those students who come for the Defense Critical Languages Program, which is a short-term fixed program, many of them would actually like to get a degree on top of that from the University of Montana. And the military will reimburse them for that degree, but only up to a certain level. By setting our tuition for these non-resident online programs at 125%, it will be attractive to those students to actually enroll for an online program. Without that, they simply won't enroll, period. And so it's all revenue positive in the sense that we don't get those students at all now if they have to pay our regular non-resident rates. A second example, our media arts program has just put their bachelor's degree totally online. They can get the full degree, the media arts courses, the gen eds and everything totally online. But if a student from Iowa or any other state has to pay our regular non-resident tuition rates, they won't do that. There are too many online programs out there at more affordable prices. And so by opening this up or by making these tuition rates more competitive, we're getting students that we just simply won't see at all otherwise. So we're getting the 125%, whereas without it, we'll get zero. Thank you.
Thank you, President Engstrom. Yes, Regent Tuss.
Thank you for that explanation. Do you have any sense of what that bump's going to be? I mean, I've been trying to pinpoint that number and I can't seem to put my finger on it. Do you know, even anecdotally, what that might be?
Let me answer that for the media arts program, but I think Don Loringer is still here in the audience, and Don, perhaps you could give some, is he still here? Okay, maybe you could give some sense of how many students you might expect on the military side. The media arts program, though, put this online thing in place this fall, and knowing that this policy was perhaps coming down the road, they have seen essentially a doubling in the number of people who have declared a media arts major, and that doubling results from people mostly out of the state. So that was a very good response already. And Don, maybe you could indicate just some estimate of the military personnel, and if you could answer that both in terms of our own defense critical language students, but also the broader military issue that you've talked to me about.
Provost Brown just asked me if I could come up with a number, and I said no.
This is a complex, but everything comes together at the same time in this issue. The Defense Critical Language Program, which we compete for by contract, which gives us between $2 and $3 million a year, and the IDC that goes with that and so forth. In part because of our success, the senior leadership of the military is encouraging their units to get that kind of language training at colleges and universities like the University of Montana, and we're frankly the most successful one. And then the caveat is that offer you a pathway to a degree opportunity. We don't, because our tuition assistance is $250 per semester hour, which the way things are currently laid out, that exceeds what that soldier would be able to do. So we have a number of soldiers that will come through this program and get between 23 and 46 hours of University of Montana credit. And they may need a few core courses to get to an associate's degree. And their service is telling them that to be successful in today's world, education is more important, get a degree, but they meet a roadblock. This policy will eliminate that roadblock. And oh, by the way, it will also make that sort of education at the university, it opens up the pool of potential candidates by 1 million people who are active duty military members. So I can't tell you exactly what the impact's going to be, but I think it's going to be very substantial.
What I heard is that we're going to have 1 million people in this program.
Yeah, probably not.
Thank you for your questions. Yes, Regent Johnson.
I'm supportive of this change, and I would encourage us to continue to look at pricing for online services much more frequently than every 10 or 8 years. I mean, it's very rapidly changing. It looks to me like we have the potential to leverage some fixed costs here, and so I would just encourage us to continue to look at pricing both for resident and, frankly, non-resident and resident. It may well be that there should be a discount on tuition for non-resident for this type of courses.
Thank you. Yes, President Cruzado, do you have some comments?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add that the models that we have worked on at MSU coincide exactly with what President Engstrom is saying. We really don't have a clear, a definitive number, but we feel that this is going to be more very advantageous. We have also gone an extra mile in conversations with our affiliated campuses, so that without establishing a veto system, we have committed ourselves to have a process of consultation so that we make sure that we are not undercutting each other by then starting a price war that might result in damage to our affiliated campuses. But the beauty of the policy is that it gives us flexibility. And what we also need to avoid thinking, in addition to the 1 million people that are already waiting out there to enroll, is the notion that now we're all going to drop our prices to 125. That is a base, that is a minimum. Some institutions will find that it will be 125 for some courses. For other courses, we will find that 200% make a lot of sense and that there's still good and sound demand.
Great, thank you for those comments. I think that's important for us all to understand too, because we do want to make sure that this is good for the whole system and not just for a few. Do we have any other comments or questions here at the table? Yes, Regent Sheehy. This is your last question, I'm sorry.
I don't know to whom to direct this, but I was wondering, could a person get a year's worth of, say, Gen Ed credits online while living in Montana at this $125 or 25% level and establish residency and then come in as a resident student for everything other than Gen Eds?
Regent Sheehy, yes. Good question. Students the rate only applies to courses that are part of an online program. So if under that scenario, all of those courses that they took might do that, but there are other board policies that says students can only, to establish residency, cannot take more than 6 credits a semester, and so there are other safeguards in there, and it's a good question, and I'm sure that as we sat around and tried to think in our minds all of the different ways around this, that I'm not sure that one came up, but we did try to go through and make sure, and the big piece is being able to identify students that are in these programs, and to have a clear and accurate accounting of the courses they take, and then the appropriate tuition level with those courses. And I've been assured at the campus levels from the registrars that that is something that we can do.
Tuition paying parent.
All right, well, thank you for your questions. Are there any other questions from those at the table? Any questions from the public? All right, well, thank you, Deputy Commissioner Moisey, for helping us to discuss this particular item and this policy change. I'll ask the committee members if we wish to move item I forward for a vote for tomorrow. Okay, so moved. Thank you for your patience. We want to continue on here. We have a couple items, both a level 1 memorandum and a level 2 memorandum. And if we could have Deputy Commissioner Moisey talk about these 2 items, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Chair Robinson, members of the board, level 1 items, as you'll recall, are items that have relative low cost on a campus, adhere to mission, and have minimal duplication kinds of issues. Again, very briefly to talk about the process, these are submitted by the campuses. They get vetted through the Chief Academic Officers Group, and if there's any issues that need to be worked out, they are worked out before they come as informational to the board. So these are informational. They're approved in the Commissioner's office, and they're here just to notify the board of these changes. If there's any questions on any of them specifically, I can try to address those.
Doesn't seem to be at this point, so if we can move on to item B for the level 2 memorandum.
Chair Robinson, these are the level 2 items. These are new level 2 items coming to the board. So you'll remember this is a 2-meeting process. The first meeting, they're informational, and they come back at a subsequent meeting for approval. There are 3 items here. Again, these have gone through extensive campus and also vetting by the chief academic officers. The 3 items here are a request from Montana State University Bozeman to establish 3 PhD degrees in education. There's currently an educational doctorate and EDD degree there. One of the questions that came up in the CAO meeting and on the ARSA call was the collaboration between the education deans and schools in the state, and my understanding is there was a lot of discussion about that and agreement in that sense. The second item is a request to authorize the authorization to establish a Center for Children, Families, and Workforce Development. And again, that's been shared fairly widely across the system. And if there's any comments or questions there. And the third item is a request to establish a BS degree in Applied Health and Safety Sciences at Montana Tech. And my understanding on this through questions of Provost Abbott is this is really to respond to the accreditation, and the accreditation wants to have the students have a degree that specifically says one or the other. Currently, the students are getting options in each of those 2 areas, and so the coursework hasn't really changed. It is just bringing up a new name for the degree. So with that, if there's any specific questions on any of those items, I believe there are faculty here and deans that if there are specific questions from the board, can answer those.
Regarding these 3 items on our level 2 memorandum, are there any questions that the committee has? Any comments that they would like to make at all? Are there any comments from the other regents? Any comments or questions from the administrators or the commissioner's office? And any comments from the public? All right. Well, thank you for that information. Let's go ahead. I know that we've put this off at our last meeting, and we wanted to have a report on the a student affairs update on the financial literacy education program. And so, Neil, if you would go ahead and kick this off. Thank you.
Chair Robinson, members of the board, again, this has been an interest of the board, and we ran out of time in the last meeting in this committee, and so Mr. Ron Muffick, Director of Student Services in our office, and Brian French from University of Montana, and Karina Beck from MSU are going to present the financial literacy education programs that are on at the system level, but also on those 2 main campuses.
Thank you, Neil. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, members of the board. As Neil introduced my colleagues here, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to do a kind of a summary of where we've come from and where we're going with financial literacy. And then Karina and Brian will give you some specific tangible things that are being done at the campuses. You know, financial literacy or financial education has been kind of a buzzword for the last 10 years. And we've come a long way in the last decade, a long way from the pizza parties, trying to lure students in and provide them trinkets and water bottles and pencils and pens and that kind of thing to get them to come to a session on financial education. What was a driver for that was, if you go to the first slide, Elizabeth, was our affordability task force. As you remember, this board was very concerned with rising student loan default rates and student debt. So we looked at our affordability task force. We came out of there with 3 recommendations. One recommendation was to increase need-based financial aid. Another was to centralize default prevention efforts. And then the third was a coordinated and collaborative financial literacy education program. So that's something, previously our efforts were pretty fractured. We relied on private companies to provide that information, and so a lot of them were student loan companies, so there was some concern about a consistent theme or a consistent message. So that's was one of the main focuses going forward, was we wanted to make sure we had a consensus, we wanted to have a coordinated and collaborative approach. We got the funding for it through the Federal College Access Challenge Grant. It's a federal formula grant of about $1.2 million a year. And we are coordinating it through the Commissioner's Office, as I've said, with sub-grants to campuses to establish programs. In the last 2 years, about 2.5 years, we're on year 3, we've gone we've put in about $1.2 million into financial education programs. We went $300,000 year 1, $400,000 year 2, $500,000 this year. Significant investment by the board, significant investment from our offices. We have coordination from the Commissioner's Office. If you look at the next slide, we have 2 program managers there, Carrie Kelly and Andrea Opitz, 2 very dedicated people that have been with our organization for a number of years. They manage the implementation of best practices that we developed and also the sub-grants. We have our campus programs where we have dedicated financial education staff and the people who are implementing the best practices, and Brian and Karina will provide you that detail. And then the third kind of leg to our stool is our transit online financial education program, which is one of the EverFi products that we've added, and it's being made available to all students. So that's a key piece. To give you some kind of comparison with how we look compared to the rest of the country, As I've said, we have about $1.2 million that we put into this program the last 3 years. We have 100% of the MUS institutions have programs. Nationally, about 65% of institutions around the country have programs. 100% of our institutions have funding. Nationally, about 53% receive funding. 47% have no funding at all. So these programs are being operated on campuses around the country on a shoestring, basically. 31% of those funded have an annual budget of $5,000 or less nationally, whereas we have an average budget of about $47,000 for our MUS campuses, and they range from $20,000 to $100,000. So it's a significant effort to address the student debt issue, the affordability issue, and to help students manage their finances. Our accomplishments, real quickly, best practices, we've developed them and implemented them. Again, the consistent message and approach has been a key piece. We have programs established at all campuses of the MUS and the community colleges. And of note, we've also established programs with the tribal colleges. Tribal colleges have been an important partner here with us. We make sure that they receive appropriate funding, and their programs are slightly different because we don't have the control or the connection that we have from the Commissioner's office with our other campuses. Really a big accomplishment here that I shouldn't understate is the change in culture for financial education and how it has been looked at. It was one of those kind of a fringe issue, difficult to quantify, difficult to define, and now it's something that is really embedded and integrated into the campus culture. I think Brian and Karina will talk about that as far as how there's been buy-in from throughout the campus about what a critical issue this is, a critical student success issue. Let's see. Financial education, we've integrated it into the student success initiatives. We've integrated it into the student success offices. Our student affairs officers, as I've mentioned previously, they've identified that it's one of the 3 issues, along with alcohol, sexual misconduct, financial literacy, that we really need to address to make sure our students have the opportunity to succeed. We've taken a holistic approach to financial education. We've served over 28,000 students in the last year. And these are the kind of things that previously, when we talked about financial literacy, education, we didn't really have a lot of data. We didn't have the information to talk about what is it that we're doing, what kind of difference are we making. I think we have data now that's beginning to show our students are becoming more adept at managing their finances and their student debt. As exemplified by our percentage of freshmen that are borrowing has leveled off at the same percentage the last 2 years. The dollar amounts being borrowed by freshmen has also leveled off. So those are indicators. I think we've got 2 years of that data. If we have 1 more year of that, I think we can start to say that we have a trend. So it's something that, like I say, we've gone from talking about financial education, trying to convince people that it's something that really needs to be addressed, to now where people recognize it and they understand it. Yeah, this is something that we need to address. This is something that we're making a difference. And I'll turn it over to Karina and Brian now. I think Karina's going first to talk about some specifics so you can understand. Our program is not just a transit, a financial literacy module online. It's a very well-developed, very integrated program, and it's something really the board and all of us should really be proud of, that we've taken it seriously and we've invested the money and we're making some differences. So, Karina.
Thank you, Ron. Mr. Chair, members of the board, it is a real pleasure today to share with you what the Office of Financial Education at MSU Bozeman has been able to accomplish thanks to your leadership, thanks to your investment, thanks to your expectation, and also the commitment of our central administration. And as we roll out this program, the support that we're receiving from faculty and staff at MSU Bozeman. As you can see in this photo, this is the exterior of the Office of Financial Education. And we are located in a wonderful location in the basement of the sub, in a very high trafficked area, next to the food service and next to the Allen Yarnell Center for Student Success. This location is critical for us because it makes financial education accessible for all students. We're easy to find, and we're easy to be able to have a relationship with the Allen Yarnell Center for Student Success. So in the next slide,
you'll see that an important part of our model is that we are integrated with the Allen Yarnell Center for Student Success. Last year, we served over 15,000 students. All of that traffic, with the exception of university withdrawals, was voluntary. That means every student that had a contact with the Allen Yarnell Center for Student Success had an opportunity for financial education. And I'll share a little bit more data about that later in the presentation. Because we're combined with the center, we're able to provide targeted outreach to students. We are actively considering and focusing, using data-driven methods, on who might be at risk for departure, and with that, the full complement of our services, whether it be career counseling or career development, student success advising, or of course financial education. That full complement of the services is intended to try to encourage our students to stay in school, to persist, and provide them with the resources that will help them persist. We provide individualized support. So every student that has an appointment in our office, we had well over 3,000 appointments last year. Every student who had appointments within our office have the opportunity to have financial education to be part of that appointment. And I'll share a few more details on that shortly. We are very focused on this model. We believe that we can improve student outcomes through not just communication, not just having the student understand or know what's available, but also understand why it's relevant. Why it's relevant to think about their financial future now as a freshman, as a sophomore, as a junior, as a senior, and then moving that student to action, having them take on less debt, having them perhaps think about actually having a job or applying for an internship sooner than they thought they would need to. Once a student moves to action, we know we are doing a good job with financial education. We are delighted to collaborate with the campus community and beyond. Our faculty have invited us to come in and speak to their classes in the College of Business, Gallatin College, University Studies, College of Education and beyond. Our fraternities and sororities have invited us to come in and speak at their their weekly meetings, Monday night meetings. And even our business office, business services, we work collaboratively with them as students try to develop payment plans to the university. This is a real collaboration. All told, the sum of this effect is that we have a real focus not only on student debt and reducing student debt, but also improving the financial well-being of our students. So that lays the groundwork for what I'd like to share with you today with respect to some of our data. You can see with respect to financial education and outreach, we touched over 8,500 students last year, 8,500 students. We reached out with our Know Your Debt letters, and I realized that you learned about our Know Your Debt letters during the last Board of Regents meeting. Last year, we sent out 2,800 Know Your Debt letters. This fall, that number has dropped to 2,200. Almost 600 fewer students received a Know Your Debt letter. We're delighted with that number. We're delighted that that number has been dropped, even in light of the fact that we have the largest class, undergraduate class at MSU Bozeman. Every student and every parent at orientation learns about financial education. They watch a video. We talk to them about financial education. So as they're entering the university, we're trying to make this concept real and salient to those students. Of course, we provide workshops. And then we had 2,500 financial literacy appointments last year. And I'd like to detail what those financial literacy appointments included. So for every student that meets with a career coach or a success advisor, we talk to them about financial literacy relative to the purpose of that meeting. So if they're there to receive career advising, we visit with them about what it means to have a solid financial future relative to their career, how they can take steps and actions now with respect to internships, working for a particular employer, so that they can build a solid financial base. We also have intensive financial literacy appointments. And when I say intensive, they really are. This is where the student seeks out, and again, this is voluntary, but they seek out a financial coach. They have very real conversations about what debt means. Some of our students have high debt, and we work with them to help develop a plan for budget, savings, and reduction of debt. On the other end of the continuum, we also work with students who have received tremendous job offers. Some of those students tell us that they are going to earn more than their parents combined. And so their question, it's true, and that their question is, how do I manage my money well? I need an example. Show me how to do this. So intensive appointments on both ends of the continuum. And finally, this is the only time where students are required to meet with our office. When students complete a university withdrawal, they have exit coaching, exit financial coaching with our advisors. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So let's talk about, that was last year. Let's talk about this year and what we plan to do. Thanks to you, thanks to your leadership, we've been able to implement the Transit Financial Wellness course. I'm happy to report today, Kayla Fields, our program manager, advised me yesterday, we've had 1,368 students participate in the financial literacy course with Transit. 1,368, over 1,000 have either completed the course or near completion of the course. So in our first semester, we have just about half of our freshman class participating in this program. We're going to keep going into next semester. So the Transit program has allowed us to have enhanced entrance counseling. We're going to use the data from Transit to identify students who have not participated and really connect with them next semester. We are also very focused on exit counseling. Every student beginning this December class and beyond, the December graduating class and beyond, will receive a letter from our office inviting them to participate in exit financial coaching. I've mentioned to you previously that we've been invited into the classrooms thanks to our wonderful faculty. We're also getting more creative with our workshops. So this semester, there will be a workshop for hunting on a budget. We're really trying to connect with our students in creative ways to invite them to think about their financial future. We are champions of the freshman 15. That's the freshman 15 that we want our students to have. Think about taking more classes so they can reduce time to degree. We're also working on a professional skills academy to really link and connect with our employers in Montana, inviting them to give a sense of what they expect from our students so that they can learn how to be successful in the workplace and think about the skills that they need to be successful in the workplace, and also understand why being financially solvent matters. We know employers look at credit scores when they hire people. And so this academy is intended to fuse both together. And then, of course, we are very data-driven. We are value-centered, we're data-driven, and we're outcomes-focused. And so we use data to help us inform interventions, who we need to target. We're focusing on 1,334 students in particular, inviting them to use all the services in the Allen Yarnell Center for Student Success, including financial education. And with that, we believe that we will have a nice report for you in the future as we continue with program assessment. Finally, I just want to share a few stories with you. You can see this is the private consultation space in the Office of Financial Education. So you've heard a lot of data, you've heard information from me, but I have 3 stories for you that I want to share. The first is that Keith Hamburg is providing a consultation with a student. He received a text message from another student who he worked with to help the student pay off her credit card debt. And that student texted the statement, the credit card statement to Keith, indicating she paid off her credit card. Awfully exciting. Another story, one of our financial coaches met with a student after orientation, after our summer orientation. That student, their family came in to say, we really want to develop a financial plan. How do we do this so we don't take on too much debt? And the final story is one where the student actually ran out of financial aid. She reached her ceiling. She reached her maximum. She was in nursing. So we were able to work with the College of Nursing and an Exceed grant for an internship. She was placed at the VA, working at the VA with a summer internship. She was converted to full-time employment, and now she's in a loan forgiveness program. So thank you. Thank you for your investment. Thank you for your trust. Thank you for your expectation. We look forward to continuing to promote financial education on our campus, making it accessible for all students so they have a healthy, sound future as they become citizens in the workplace. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's an honor to be here this afternoon, and I appreciate the opportunity to tell you about how we're bringing financial education to our students here at the University of Montana. While there isn't much we can do to control the cost of attendance in higher education these days, what we can do is try to find ways to offset that cost through education and by promoting a culture of financial wellness on our campuses, like Ron alluded to at the beginning of the presentation. With this in mind, our ultimate goals through the financial education program at UM are to reduce the student loan default rates and ultimately to reduce total student loan indebtedness for our students. I want to briefly just review the handouts provided because these go into a little more detail than I'll be able to talk about through the presentation today. The larger handout provides a macro level summary of our program activity through the past year and our plans for the remainder of the 14-15 year ahead. Again, this program brochure of sorts provides a level of detail that I thought might be interesting in the days ahead that I won't be able to cover today. The brochure, the smaller, is our actual brochure that we distribute to students that outlines our services, different topics we cover, and ultimately our game plan in terms of how we serve the students here at UM. So just wanted to briefly touch on those before we start talking about metrics and data. So if we could go to the next slide, please. A cornerstone concept of our program is the integration of financial literacy education with student success initiatives on campus. We wholeheartedly believe that academic planning and financial planning go hand in hand, and we believe that that underlying spirit is sort of the cornerstone foundation of our program. So we officially opened in March this year. We haven't been open for that long, but we've been making great progress here at UM. This slide, I want to review in the handout, those metrics in the larger handout show activity through the 13-14 year, and this slide shows program activity to date. So it carries over into the 14-15 year. As shown on the slide, we've had over 3,500 student sessions, over 2,400 academic advising appointments with integrated financial literacy education information. These appointments essentially serve as pipelines for referrals to the financial education program, and we've had great success with this partnership. 345 students attended workshops we conducted in collaboration with various campus programs and services. We've presented in over 245 students in classroom presentations. This is an area we really hope to grow through the program, is reaching students where they are in the classroom and embedding this learning objective content into our academic curricula so that students ultimately see it as part of our culture like we've discussed previously. We've held over 160 one-on-one financial counseling appointments to date. Those relate to the extensive financial counseling appointments Karina alluded to. We cover a wide range of topics from students struggling with student loan default and bankruptcy even to students who are a little more financially well off and just want some help planning their financial investments and managing their budgets. We also collaborated with KPCN, which is UM's student-led video production group, to produce 4 UM-specific and 7 Montana University system peer-to-peer financial literacy videos. We're very proud of this in our attempt to meet students where they are. Next slide, please. This slide shows a picture of our program counter in Grizz Central, which is a high-traffic student services area in the Lomason Center here on campus. We also hold regular office hours at both the Missoula College and Bitterroot campuses as well, and at several of our partner program offices that are detailed in the larger handout. So we're really trying to expand our efforts through multiple partnerships with our campus partners here on campus, through the Bitterroot College and Missoula College campuses, and get the word out that we're open to the entire UM community. Next slide, please. As I mentioned previously, a big part of what we're trying to do here is to make financial wellness part of our culture here at the University of Montana. We're doing this through expanding training and making our services available to employees and alumni in addition to the students. So far, we've collaborated with 11 student services units at UM, and those are detailed in the handout. We're growing that number every day, and we're getting more and more excitement and interest in our program, so that's positive reassurance that we're succeeding in our efforts. We've trained over 30 employees and have plans to continue expanding training over the next year. And we will advertise all trainings and other relevant opportunities for the campus community through a planned communication strategy utilizing targeted messaging. We're trying to use data to the extent possible to drive our decision making and make good, proactive choices that we can help students ultimately succeed. Next slide, please. Lastly, I just want to briefly review our plans for the remainder of the 14-15 year ahead.
Again, we will use data-driven decision-making to reach out proactively and contact students that are deemed financially at risk. We want to try to head this off before students get into situations that are beyond the point of no return, so to speak, and ultimately help them succeed. Sometimes that means taking a short break from their studies, working for a little while, saving some money, coming back in a healthier financial situation. So we try to customize our approach to every individual student's needs and not rubber stamp any sort of recommendations for a larger body. We'll continue to use student-produced videos to reach students where they are in the digital realm. We hope to enhance our entrance and exit counseling processes, and we will assess program effectiveness focusing on measurable outcomes, most notably the student loan default rates and total student loan indebtedness that were mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. I just want to share a very brief story as well of a student that I had the pleasure of working with for many years in the context of academic advising. This student had a very hard time with his studies. He's a non-traditional male and just really struggled academically, lacked some of the foundational skill sets and academic performance to be successful his first go-round in school. So he ultimately gave up about 7 years ago, withdrew, and decided that he didn't want to pursue his studies any longer. Last year, I got a phone call from this student who had changed his mind, had a little stroke of good luck working across the country, and decided to come back and resume his studies at UM. At that point, because he had sort of thrown in the towel in his previous attempt, he had gone into student loan default, which, as I'm sure you're all aware, is a very nasty thing to be in as a student and as a consumer. I'm pleased to report that through the efforts of our program and coordination with the staff at the Commissioner's office, we were able to fast-track the student's loan debt rehabilitation, get him back into a status that made him eligible for Title IV financial aid, and he is on track to finish his Associate of Arts degree by the end of this semester. So that's a feel-good story for us and something that makes us very proud to play a part in this statewide effort. Thank you so much for your support, and I look forward to bringing you more good information in the future.
Thanks, Brian and Karina. Mr. Chair, if you could indulge us, we'd like to show one of the videos. Brian mentioned our collaboration with KPCN. It's, I think, a couple minutes long. Again, these are videos put together by the Peer Connection Network, student to student, which we have found to be pretty powerful. And if we could show that real quickly, and then we'll end quickly after that.
Montana. I'm Tucker with KPCN. For many of us, college can be our first opportunity to make and spend our own money. However, that comes with its own set of responsibilities. Managing your money can seem difficult at first, but with a few easy steps, you can be well on your way to being financially strong and independent in no time. The first step to budgeting is finding ways to save money. In order to find ways to save money, I came up with a list of wants and threw out everything I didn't necessarily need. These included eating out less, making my own coffee instead of buying it every day, and carpooling with friends. Other ways may include living with a roommate, renting textbooks instead of buying them, or being aware of how much you are spending on extracurricular activities. The second step I took was to create a college spending plan. I wrote out all of my income, money from my part-time job, and my expenses, including rent, bills, food and gas, and then from there, I put aside money for extracurriculars or emergencies. By creating a spending plan, I could see exactly where my money was going. After budgeting for rent and bills, you can decide how much money you have to spend for the rest of the month and how much you need to save. The last step was to track my spending. Paying attention to where you spend your money makes a world of difference when it comes to budgeting. There are many apps and websites such as getmoneysmarts.org that help you track where your money is going. Budgeting can be complicated, but by taking the right steps, you can be on your way to keeping track of and saving your money in no time. For help creating your own spending plan, visit your financial education office. You can look up campus-specific contact information at mus.edu/financial education.
Again, Mr. Chair, I just want to reiterate, this is really a cutting-edge program. We don't see this happening anywhere else in the country where we have a system-wide collaborative approach to financial literacy. When we're talking about issues of access to higher education and affordability and retention and completion, and when you see studies where over 50% of the students that withdraw do it because of financial reasons, it just makes sense for us to focus on the financial education piece. And with that, we would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Muffick, and thank you for the presenters here. A few things I want to say before I open it up for a couple questions. First of all, thank you for your patience because we weren't able to have you present at our last meeting, and we appreciate you hanging in there. And it was well worth it. To hear how this has evolved is beyond tremendous. I mean, you thank us, but we thank you for doing the hard work, for having the enthusiasm in order to be out working, with the students to make these services and resources available to them. From the sounds of it, we're not quite to the trending part. And within another year, it sounds like we'll have some data in order to start to evaluate the effectiveness of this particular program. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, we do have some data. I hesitate when I see that students, say percentage of freshmen that are borrowing is leveled off for 2 years, and the percentage or the dollar amount that freshmen are borrowing has leveled off 2 years. I'm a little hesitant to say that's a trend. In one more year, we have 3 years of that. Then I would say, yeah, I think we have some pretty good data. I also think we're going to continue to refine the data that's being mined at the campuses, particularly Bozeman is focused on that, and Missoula as well. I don't know if you guys would like to add that with your indulgence, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I think you're right. We are still in the infancy of the program. We know that transit will be very important for us as we are able to have a system that is uniform for students, that we're able to see what they have done with their student debt after taking the course. We also know that we've seen over 600 students fewer students receive the Know Your Debt letter. We're excited about that. We aren't certainly at the point of saying that's a trend, but that's something we're very much paying attention to.
If I could add, and the Know Your Debt letter is provided to students who've reached a certain threshold, yes. So that's 600 fewer students who've reached that threshold of debt to trigger them receiving that letter. That's correct? Yeah.
And if I might also ask that, so to confirm, you had mentioned in the beginning of the presentation 28,000 students. You've made contact with 28,000 students providing this information. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, that's correct. That's between the Commissioner's Office outreach as well as all of the campuses. So to think about 5 years ago, where we've come from, the fact that, as I say, it was a fringe issue, financial education, and the fact that this board and previous boards have dedicated the time to talk about this issue, and the fact that we've now can say we've reached 28,000 students in a single year is an amazing number. And that could be something from an email, as appointments, as Karina and Brian have talked about, or attending sessions, that sort of thing. We're also looking at expanding. We're working with K-12 as well. We use some of this College Access Challenge grant funding to partner with the Student Assistance Foundation, who's involved at K-12 quite a bit, to provide financial education information to juniors and seniors in high school, so that we're kind of reaching down to them before they reached higher education. So I continue to see it growing, and this isn't an issue that's really going to go away. I think we can all see the issue of student debt and default rates continuing to be around. And yes, 28,000, I guess that's a long answer to yes, 28,000 is who we've reached.
Well, I just want to mention that I think Regent Buchanan would be very happy to hear and see the results of all of the efforts that started with the board and with all of your hard work. This is really exciting, and we'll watch this with great anticipation to see how it continues to evolve. I do have one last question, and this is really related to board policy. Were any regents at all involved in affecting how that actor acted on the particular display that you showed us? For the record, please.
Yes, go ahead. Mr. Chair, there was no undue influence from any regents regarding who we chose to participate in the video. We found out afterwards that there was a connection with one of our regents.
I can speak to that. I did not know that that was happening until the September meeting when I clicked the video.
Well, congratulations. You have a very stable boyfriend. Yes.
I did wonder if he's really saving on the coffee or not. I thought I saw a little bit of a smirk there from Regent Williams on that part.
The smirk was that he drinks Coke Zero and Monsters and not coffee.
Do any of the other regents have any comments or questions? Yes, Regent Williams.
I actually did have a follow-up comment to that. So yes, if you know me personally, you know that the person in the video is someone special to me. But beyond that, 28,000 contacts is over half of the student FTE in the Montana University system. And I think that, as you said earlier, this program is something to be proud of. And I definitely am proud of that. Not only because of the number of contacts, but I didn't let anyone know I was going to share this experience, but I actually was having some trouble making a decision about my financial future for making a decision about what I was going to do next semester in terms of helping to pay for the last semester of my education. And I was really unsure what to do, and I wanted some outside consultation besides calling my mom. You know, mom's going to be like, whatever you choose is fine, honey. So I went in and I made a financial education appointment with the Office of Financial Education. And I sat down and I explained to her, you know, where I was at, what my situation was, and what I was thinking of doing. And she really walked me through my options and how this was going to affect me, considering my earning potential and my current financial situation. And I consider myself to be a student that's fairly healthy on a financial realm and a debt level realm. And it's still scary every time you think about paying for tuition or taking out a student loan, and having someone there to help you make that decision and help you realize that you're making a good decision and that you can still pay back that amount and move forward, and you're in a good place is really a great feeling. Because student loans are scary. I mean, they're scary, and they're so common that our students take out student loans. It's very common for them, and I am really proud that we have a program that helps students through that time. So thank you from me personally, and I'm proud of the program as a member of the board.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Regent Williams. Regent Tuss?
Great presentation. Thank you so much. But keep your foot on the accelerator on this, and please come back to us and let us know what the results are as you track success. You know, in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years. Let us know how this is going. This is a top priority for this board and has been for some period of time. Thank you for the success. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm also very curious. We've heard from the 2 flagships. Please help the other campuses on this issue too. I know that you talked more on a system-wide level. I think we'd all be interested at the board table as to how we're doing in Havre, how we're doing in Dillon, how we're doing at Tech. So I'm assuming you're sharing these resources with the smaller campuses as well. And I'd be curious about how that's going.
Mr. Chair, Regent Tuss, I can comment on that. Our smaller campuses, our regional 4 years and our 2 years, they don't have the resources, obviously, to do some of the data that are being done at the flagships, but their programs are very well developed as well. You know, jumping out at me, I think of MSU Billings. They have a dedicated staff member down there. They're very cutting edge in branding their program, done a very nice job. Western as well has done an excellent job. Montana Tech has done an excellent job. Those jump right out at me. We've made sure the best practices, we were able to develop those. We developed them in the first year, and then we honed them the second year, and we recognize there's a little bit different resources available at those campuses, so we've been able to be a little bit more creative native, where maybe there's an FTE that's shared between financial aid and the financial education program. But the fact that there's dedicated staff on every campus that someone's able to go talk to is a key for us. So I can tell you that much. We have dedicated staff there, and it's a slightly different approach at the smaller campuses, but very effective as well.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions at all? All right, well, thank you for your presentation. We appreciate it, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
We are on the home stretch, believe it or not. What I want to do is let's move on to information item D. Neil, could you introduce our presenter?
Yes, thank you, Chair Robinson. So this item is our annual November American Indian and Minority Achievement Update, and Brandy Foster, who is our Director of AMA in the Commissioner's Office, will present the data report, and then she also has one or two other things that I believe she wants to add to her presentation. So thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Moisey, Deputy Commissioner Moisey. He makes me call him Commissioner Moisey in the office, so sorry, slipped up. Chairman Robinson, members of the board, and Commissioner Christian, I'm happy to be here, and I know this is the end of the day, so I will honor the information that we're sharing, but also try to make sure that we get through and honor the time. So every November, we present our data on our American Indian student performance, and so I'm going to go through that. This information is available on the agenda, as well as we go into more specific data for the campuses on our website under the American Indian Data Center. So for now, I'm just going to look at it as a system. Our total enrollment for fall of 14 is 2,210 students, which is 4.8% of our total population. The significance here of that number is that over the last 4 years, which is the time that we changed the way we identify race in our university system. Before that, if a student said that they were Hispanic, then that's how they got counted regardless of how else they identified. In 2011, Deputy Commissioner Trevor changed it so that if a student claims American Indian identity, that trumps everything, excuse me, which is important for the state of Montana. So you can see that we have essentially not changed percentage-wise our growth there in American Indian enrollment. Retention-wise, I'm going to go to the website because this, and it's hard to see, but this is campus-specific, and we look at it campus-level data right now because the rates can really vary. For instance, we might see at Montana Tech, they have a 100% retention rate because they only had 6 students. And so I think it's important to look at the campus differentiation there. And I wanted to point out the successes, which are critical here, especially on those campuses that are working diligently in that area. Go ahead and shoot me back to the, thanks. When we look at now, the next indicator is graduation rates. And what I did here was I compared our American Indian students, and again, these are folks that identify themselves as American Indian, to the overall population. When you look at the certificate level, that's the fall cohort that started in fall 2009. If we measure graduation rates by 100% of the time allocated and 150%. So for a 1-year certificate, 100% would be 1 year and 150% would be 18 months. For our, if you compare the overall with our American Indian population, you see that there's not a huge gap there, that we graduate about the same rate. When you go into the associate degree and the bachelor's degree, it tells a little bit of a different story. And again, what's important here is probably not the overall graduation rate, and Tyler and I had a conversation earlier about why we want to focus too much on that, but what is significant is the gap. So the problems with measuring graduation rate appear in both the American Indian population and the total, and so we can sort of say we're comparing apples and apples.
If you look at it, the 100% rate for associate's degree runs at about half, as well as 150%. When you get to the bachelor's degree, our success rate is even lower. Now, the degree production is the next indicator that we review, and essentially what this means is the total number of degrees attained. And again, what's important is that we're not seeing a lot of growth. So if you look at 2006, 2007, and you compare the numbers for the American Indian population, and you look at 11, 12, there's just not a big change. Now, you may also agree that in certificate, we haven't changed much overall, gone down a little bit. But if you look at associate level in particular, and I'm sure this is due to the efforts of College Now and the invigoration of two-year education in Montana, you see a significant jump in the degrees produced, but not in our American Indian population. And in our bachelor's degree, we've gone down as well. When you look at the total number of certificates, associates, and bachelors achieved, we're looking at about a 0.03% of the total degrees produced in the Montana University system are by American Indian students. And when you understand that our total enrollment is around 5%, you can see the significant drop there in between who's coming to school and who's achieving credentials. So we all have talked about this. We know this. We know that our American Indian students achieve at a lower rate, that there's a gap between our overall student achievement and our American Indian student achievement. And there are a lot of theories as to why, and there's a lot of good research out there, and some based in Montana. But the important question is, what are we gonna do about that? And is there something to do? And I think that there is. And so based on our conversation in September, I have been able to, with the commissioner's help, put together a group of folks. I'm gonna pass around. As of this morning, we were still confirming people. That's why it wasn't available on online. But so we have convened, or are convening, a group of individuals from across the system and outside of the system to help us address the gap. I'm very proud of this group. I think that we've done a good job of selecting individuals across disciplines, across the functional areas of our campuses, as well as across our campuses. And I'm gonna take just a minute for those of you who don't have the list in front of you to read their names. Sweeney Winchief, faculty member, College of Education, MSU Bozeman. Chris Kearns, Vice President for Student Success, MSU Bozeman. Greg Kegel, Chancellor, MSU Northern. Roberta Evans, Dean, College of Education, Missoula. Theo Van Alst, faculty, Native American Studies, Missoula. Royale Bundy, Director of American Indian Student Services, Missoula. Rebecca Dahl, Trio Director, Western. Heidi Pasick, Associate Dean, Great Falls College. Florence Garcia, Associate Dean, City College. Those are the MUS representatives. We also have two students, Adrian Tailfeathers, who's a senior in history and poli-sci here in Missoula, and Cheryl Polachek, a doctoral candidate in education at MSU Bozeman. We invited Brad Hall, who's the institutional researcher at Blackfeet Community College, and Mandy Smoker Broaddus, the Director of Indian Education at the Office of Public Instruction. Regent Tuss has also agreed to help us with our conversation, and representing the Commissioner's Office is Deputy Commissioner Tyler Trevor and myself. So this group will come together, and if you flip over the piece of paper, what I've done is I've bulleted our first steps. What we are going to do is ultimately make recommendations to the Board of Regents that help define our responsibilities under Indian Education for All in a measurable and meaningful way. And some of that measurable way will be the data that we present here in November. We're going to look at the current data with the help of Deputy Commissioner Trevor and identify areas that we can do deeper analysis and look for opportunities for further research. We are going to map our current programs, projects, and initiatives, looking for opportunities of connections and opportunities to enhance those connections, not just within a campus, but across campuses. Review current policy and make recommendations for future policy regarding our diversity messaging. Look for opportunities to engage campus community in learning about equity inclusion and why this is important and why we should care. Identify best practices for recruitment, orientation, and retention for students and faculty staff, and look for opportunities for professional development for our faculty and staff and administrators. So I'm really excited about being able to convene this group of very experienced, knowledgeable folks who will have a lot to say and who also hold powers of position in their various areas so that they can go back and help their campuses understand how to continue this conversation. So my hope is that we will meet for the first time. This group has been put off for a little bit, but so now we're facing the holidays, and I'm hoping we might be able to meet before Christmas, but if not, we'll meet in January. Continue to convene and to have these conversations, and then to develop actions, develop recommendations, and bring them to you as soon as it makes sense to do so. Was that quick enough? Good. Any questions about that?
Do any of the regents have any questions at all? Yes, Regent Johnston.
Excuse me, very quickly. Do we have comparable data from the tribal colleges with respect to graduation rates?
We do not.
Thank you.
Well, wait, listen, I'm talking to my data person. He's saying it's not necessarily true. Can you explain?
Sure. Federal government requires campuses to report on certain metrics. It's called the IPEDS, and all campuses must do it in order to get federal financial aid.
We don't report on the tribal colleges. We don't, yeah. So that was.
That's a great question. Regent Albrecht, go ahead.
Brandy, I'm curious if you have an intention to do some sort of survey or try to solicit some feedback from existing American Indian students to see what sort of barriers that they are having for success?
I think that doing a climate survey for focused students would be a very good place to start, and I'm sure that the committee, that's one of those things that I really wanted the council to get together and flesh that out a little bit about how would that look. Do we do it on every campus? Are there existing surveys out there? And there may be, and there may have been individual campuses who ask those kind of questions that we just don't have on the system level. We've looked at other states and what they've done, and that's typically where they start is, where are we and what can we do? And I think that this group of folks is very well prepared to come in with an informed way and figure out what our first step will be. We obviously have to look at resources and what do we have as a system, and different campuses have different resources available, and try to be as efficient as possible. So we'll have to look at that.
I think also on item number 2 about the messaging, I think that I'm glad that's on the list as well, because I think that's the benefit of, one of the benefits of us taking this self-evaluation and being proactive about it, is that it also gives us an opportunity to improve our messaging if it needs to be improved. Do you have any ideas of how that'll be approached as far as our messaging?
Well, I think that this is really talking about the system and policy-wise. And for instance, our minority achievement policy is under miscellaneous. So if I was a person who wanted to find out what the Montana University system had to say about diversity, I don't know if I could find it. And so it's something, could be as simple as that, as rearranging policy or deciding where does it go more appropriately. So that's where we'll start, is looking at what exists and does it make sense to put it all together so someone can find out exactly who we are as a system and what we value regarding diversity.
And also related to Regent Johnstone's question about tribal college data, I think at some point that'll be important to have that type of information and some type of interaction there, and we'll be looking forward to recommendations from the council on that. I know that Commissioner Christian and myself in the past have gone to some of their tribal college president meetings because they've become, in the past couple of years, more organized with their efforts too. And so I think they're more than ready to collaborate with us. And I see President Cruzado shaking her head, because I know that there's been a lot of efforts through both of our flagship campuses in order to build those relationships. So I think it's important that this committee have that as part of the discussion and bring some of those recommendations forward too.
We originally had talked about inviting one of the presidents to serve, and then I met with a few of them on Monday, and we decided that we would not include them in the council, but that we would then interact with them through their council appropriately that way. So we will absolutely, they know that this is going on. And we'll be watching, and there will be plenty of opportunities for us to interact and figure out what is the best way for us to serve our students together.
Well, this is great. I mean, this is bad news, good news, but it's good to end on the good news that we're being proactive about this. And please pass along our thanks to all of those that are willing to serve on this council. We appreciate their participation and look forward to their recommendations as you all continue to meet in the future. And thank you, Regent Tuss, for participating in that as well.
Thank you.
All right, well, that is our information item D. We do, what we're going to do at this point is, again, thank you for your patience. It's gone on a little bit longer than we had intended, but I think it was a lot of information that we needed to review, that we needed to participate in, and a lot of great work that was presented this afternoon. So thank you all. Item E, the MSU Billings Academic Program Prioritization Update that was going to be presented by Provost Pagano. We've asked that we postpone that until the next meeting. I hope you're all right with that. And we appreciate the work and that you're willing to present now, but I think under the circumstances, we want to cover a few more items, and we know that other folks are waiting for us to conclude as well. So thank you, and we look forward to hearing your presentation at the next board meeting. We're going to move on to item F, the final information item for the ARSA committee, the academic program review. And for this item, I would like Deputy Commissioner Moisey to speak to item F, please.
Thank you, Chair Robinson. It looks like a lot of items here, and I'm not going to go through each one of these. This is informational. This is the results of the campus program review processes. Board policy asks each campus review every one of their academic programs at least once every 7 years. We provide a template, and part of that is to look at a number of students in the program and student graduates for the last or the preceding 7 years. And then some recommendations in terms of what the campus is going to do with that information. So there are 8 campuses here that are reporting programs on the MUS website. We have that schedule, and some campuses may not be presenting every year just because of the way they split up those over those 7 years. I won't go through each of these. If there are any questions specifically about any of the program reviews, these are very in-depth processes on the campuses. They start a year before they ever come here. Each department or program develops a fairly substantial self-review, really looking at faculty, quality and resources, student numbers, productivity, staying current with developments within the particular field, and so on and so forth. And in many cases, external reviewers come in, review the self-study document, interview other parts of campus and make recommendations to the provost. And we ask each of the campuses to condense what can be hundreds of pages into 1 or 2 pages, and what you see here are the summations of those. And so again, just the information that the board policy requires. And again, I just wanted to stress these are very labor-intensive processes. These are processes that the campuses take very seriously, and there have been and are being some fairly major decisions being made on campuses about the academic programs and resources that go with those. And so with that, these are here as informational, and certainly if there's specific questions that are beyond my understanding of these individual programs on the campuses, I'm sure the provosts who are all here can answer those in more depth. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Neil, and we want to thank all of the campuses for providing this information to the board for us to review, and for all the work that was put into them. I'd like to ask any of the regents if there's any questions or comments regarding the reviews at this point. And the campuses, I'd like to ask the campuses if there's anything that they would like to mention or speak to. All right. Well, thank you very much. That concludes the ARSA agenda, and I turn it back to you, Chairman Tuss.
Thank you, Regent Robinson, very much for that report. And thanks everybody here for sticking with us. We're a little behind schedule right now, and I do apologize for that. Before we go on to public comment at this point, I'd like to acknowledge former Montana House Representative member Diane Sands. Thank you for being with us here today. It's good to see you. Wave. Good supporter of higher education in Montana. Thank you for being with us, Diane. Do we have folks in the audience here for public comment? Could we have a couple? We have 2 or 3 folks. Okay, wonderful. Let's go into that section of our agenda at this point. Please come up to the microphone. State your name, where you're from, and welcome. Thank you for being here.
My name is Cindy Garthwaite, and I'm a professor of social work here at the University of Montana. And actually, I'm here in a different capacity as a president of the Missoula branch of the American Association of University Women, also known as AAUW. And if you don't know about AAUW, it's an organization been in existence since 1881 to promote education for girls and women. And Montana has branches associated with many of the MUS campuses, including Billings, Bozeman, Glasgow, Glendive, Great Falls, Kalispell, Livingston, Miles City, and Missoula. And since its inception, AUW has promoted education for girls and women at all levels and has been instrumental in pushing and supporting efforts to identify any barriers to those efforts, and also to reduce them. For example, this has included identifying, researching, and reducing such things as sexual harassment in middle schools and high schools. It's worked on increasing the numbers of female faculty for the purposes of equity and also role modeling for young women, promoting women in the sciences, equal pay for equal work. But today I want to speak very briefly, only about 1 more minute, to the issue of sexual assault prevention and intervention on all of the campuses in the Montana University system. We believe, as we know that you do, that universities should provide equitable educational opportunities, including those specified in Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, which stress 3 goals of relevance to the issues of safety on campuses. First of all, access to higher education. Secondly, safe and equal learning environment. And 3, the elimination of sexual harassment and assault in higher ed. We want to say that we greatly support the work of the university system, and especially the UM campus in response to recent high-profile sexual assault cases, allegations, and court proceedings. And we appreciate all the efforts to be proactive and to coordinate with all other parties involved. So we're here to say that we urge the university system to build on what UM has done, and we hope to see system-wide focus on sexual assault prevention. And I want to quote something from the fall 2004 AAUW Outlook publication. There's an article entitled "Sexual Assault: An Unspoken Barrier to Higher Education." And here on campus, it's not unspoken anymore, that's for sure. But I want to quote what they say in this article. "The fact that 1 in 5 college women is a target of sexual assault is completely, utterly unacceptable. If women are going to have equal educational opportunities, they need to be safe on campus." And we actually have copies of this outlook for all people on the Board of Regents. So we have 2 quick hopes and expectations for the university system. And the first is that anything that's instituted in terms of education and prevention and intervention in sexual assault is considered a best practice, and it be researched before it is incorporated and developed. Doesn't mean that approaches cannot be innovative and customized and creative and all of that, but we want them to be based on sound research and prevention science, and we can help with that. Our second expectation is that all system-wide efforts in sexual assault prevention be evaluated for their effectiveness. It's important to know whether our efforts show measurable differences and improvements, and we also can help with that. We believe your attention to these 2 expectations we have will enhance the outcomes, and will be available to help in monitoring what you do and supporting your efforts. So thank you for your time and concern about the welfare of women on all the campuses.
Thank you very much. Did you say that you had a handout or something for us?
I only have one today, but we plan to send one to each of the members of the board.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Diane Sands. I'm an incoming senator from Missoula, served in the House for quite a long time. But I'm also here in the capacity, I'm the former state public policy director for the AAUW. So was involved and basically drafted the letter you received 2 years ago addressing the topics that Cindy Garthwaite just mentioned to you. I'm also here in my capacity to say, good job. I really appreciate the work of the faculty, the administration, the students, and the staff at the University of Montana in addressing the situation of sexual assault on campus. Thank you. But I think we can learn from that. And one of the things as a legislator I look at is how do we address the issue of sexual assault on a statewide basis. And so I'm going to propose that we do an interim study on the issue of sexual assault statewide. I've been involved in this topic with the legislature for over 3 decades, and we have never looked at this topic in any systemic kind of way. We do piecemeal little pieces of legislation. But based on the statistics you've heard and that many of you know, sexual assault against women and men is at an epidemic level across the country, and it impacts everything from families, individuals, educational opportunity, the costs of our correctional system. It has very far-reaching ramifications. So it seems to me appropriate that the legislature would want to look at this in more depth for many reasons, only one of which would be to look at the models for best practices that you all are developing as a result of the Department of Justice situation, and to look at how it's being implemented on a statewide basis, not just for the campuses, but also best practices related to local law enforcement and how they handle sexual assault, and our county attorneys and other jurisdictional entities that have responsibility for prosecutorial issues. So I will be bringing that forward. I hope that you will be there to testify as to your good work and how it might be applicable to the rest of the state. We should, if we get lemons, we should make lemonade. So thank you for your work, and I will look forward to seeing you in Helena.
Thank you, Senator-elect. I should have used Senator-elect to introduce you earlier. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Dinsmore, and this is Jessica Hahn, and we're here today on behalf of the Idaho-Montana chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects, which represents the landscape architecture professionals. We are requesting your support in establishing a landscape architecture program at Montana State University. A feasibility study for the creation of the program was completed in 2008 and concluded that a landscape architecture program is needed and feasible. Having a landscape architecture program in Montana is of particular importance to both of us, as we are native Montanans who are forced to go to out-of-state schools for our education in landscape architecture.
I grew up in Hall, Montana, and I attended MSU Billings, where I got a degree in biology, but I found that I wanted to study landscape architecture, so I ended up going to the University of Arizona, where I got my master's in landscape architecture.
And I'm Jessica Hahn. I'm a landscape architecture professional here in Missoula, and I grew up in Lewistown, Montana, and got my undergraduate degree here at U of M in community and environmental planning. I then as well wanted to become a landscape architect, so I was forced to go out of state, happened to attend the same program that Kate did in Arizona, and then was lucky enough to be able to find my way back. There's a couple of main points that we wanted to make about landscape architecture and why it's important. It's a bit of a misunderstood profession. First of all, Montana just itself is a very unique resource with a variety of different landforms. There's rivers, lakes, prairies. All of those things need specific professionals who are capable of planning and designing for our unique resources that Montana has to offer. Additionally, in terms of economic development, students who want to get a degree in landscape architecture are forced to go out of state and pay out of state tuition, which is a lot more, and that takes money away from the university system. Landscape architecture is an emerging field and is becoming quite popular, so Montana is kind of getting behind a little bit on that. Additionally, graduates like Kate and myself who want to come back to our home states are having a hard time finding jobs because there are not a lot of landscape architecture firms.
MSU has already established strong engineering and architecture programs, and adding a landscape architecture program can only strengthen these programs through multidisciplinary collaborations. Currently, we're seeing state and federal projects that are requiring an integrated design team, so landscape architects are working right alongside architects and engineers. You know, having an understanding from early in their education can really help build this team together of landscape architects and engineers and make it stronger. I currently work at WGM Group here in Missoula. I work alongside engineers and planners every day in a collaborative process.
And additionally, Montana has its own specific challenges. We're undergoing a lot of development currently, I'm sure as everyone is aware of. Growth and subdivisions are popping up everywhere, and it's important that we plan and design our communities and our towns responsibly and sustainably. Landscape architects have a really interesting perspective. We're kind of in between civil engineers and architects and work holistically with the land and with responsible design. So it would really be a benefit to Montana as a whole if we had more people practicing this profession within state. And Kate's gonna hand out some specific examples. We have a letter from Idaho-Montana chapter of ASLA in support of this program, as well as just a variety of different projects in Montana that people might be aware of. We design things from trails to parks to cemeteries to streetscapes to urban plazas, large-scale planning such as subdivisions and master plan communities, everything kind of in between there, and we really ask for your support for this program, and we thank you for your time and could answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you. Thank both of you. Is there further public comment? Any additional? President Cruzado.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to delay this anymore, but I think I feel compelled to say a few things. This is an indicator of the many hours that you as board members dedicate to us, and I think that it's a wonderful testament to the people of Montana, that this is truly a labor of love. I'm sure that you also recognize that behind every presentation today, there were hours and hours of preparation by our provost, by our officers, the different individuals. And as we were about to wrap this up, I just needed to say I was so impressed by all the presentations, but of note, I think that I need to mention that the Montana PBS presentation was extraordinary, but I would be remiss also if I don't tell my colleague Royce Engstrom how impressed I was by the Maureen and Mike Mansfield Center presentation. And Royce, you really have a jewel. What a wonderful asset for the state of Montana. I look forward to more collaborations, and you really have a spectacular program there. Thank you so much for that presentation.
Thank you. Further public comment? Additional public comment? Any further public comment? Seeing none, we are recessed until 8 a.m. President Engstrom.